The Devil's Wife wore lipstick that wasn't hers. Adriana Valente never thought betrayal would come with evidence. A crimson kiss mark on her husband's collar, the scent of another woman's perfume soaking through Italian silk. She'd married New York's most dangerous man, trading safety for love in a world where neither truly existed. But when Dominic Russo looked her in the eye and chose his mistress over his wife, Adriana didn't just lose her marriage, she lost everything. What he didn't know, she was carrying his child. What she didn't know, the other woman had been planning her murder all along. If you're watching, hit that like button and drop your city in the comments. Let's see how far this story travels. The penthouse terrace stretched 43 floors above Manhattan, all glass and steel, and the kind of view that made ordinary people feel like gods. Adriana Valente stood at the railing, her fingers wrapped tight around cold metal, watching the city lights blur through tears she refused to let fall. Behind her, the party continued, crystal clinking, laughter echoing off marble, the usual crowd of dangerous men and women who smiled with their mouths but never their eyes. She'd found the lipstick stain that morning. Not hidden, not subtle, practically branded onto the collar of Dominic's white dress shirt like a claim of ownership. The color was wrong. Dark plum, almost black. Adriana wore red, always red. Everyone knew that. "You've been out here a while." His voice cut through the night air like it always did, smooth, controlled, the kind of tone that had talked men into surrendering territories and women into forgetting their better judgment. Adriana didn't turn around. "Needed air," she said. Dominic Russo moved beside her, close enough that she could smell his cologne mixed with something else. Something floral and expensive that definitely wasn't hers. He was wearing a new suit, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, the kind that costs more than most people's cars. His dark hair was swept back, still slightly damp from a shower he'd taken at 6 p.m. Before the party. Before coming home. "The Castellanos are asking for you," he said. "Vita wants to talk about that charity thing." Let Vita wait. She felt him go still beside her. Dominic wasn't used to being dismissed, especially not by his wife. They'd been married 3 years of learning the rules of his world, of becoming the perfect Don's wife, of standing beside him at family dinners and smiling while men discussed things she wasn't supposed to understand, but absolutely did. "What's wrong?" The question came out flat, like he was checking a box rather than actually caring about the answer. Adriana finally looked at him. Even now, even with rage burning through her chest, she had to admit he was beautiful in that dangerous way that had hooked her from the start. Sharp jaw, dark eyes that could freeze a man's blood or melt a woman's resolve depending on his mood. The scar along his left cheekbone that he'd gotten before they met, back when he was still proving himself worthy of the family name. She'd fallen in love with that face, married it, woken up next to it for 1,000 mornings. "Who is she?" Adriana asked. The flicker of reaction was so brief she almost missed it, a tightness around his eyes, a fractional pause before he spoke. "Who's who?" "Don't." Her voice came out harder than she'd intended. "Don't insult me like that. The lipstick on your shirt this morning, plum, almost black. The perfume you're wearing right now that isn't mine. The fact that you've been coming home later and later, and when you do, you barely look at me." Dominic's jaw tightened. For a moment she thought he might actually deny it, might try to gaslight her the way she'd seen other men in this world do to their wives. But he'd never been a liar. Not to her, anyway. Lies were for enemies and business partners. With Adriana, he'd always been brutally, sometimes cruelly honest. "Her name's Serena," he said quietly. The confirmation hit like a physical blow. Somewhere in the back of her mind, Adriana had been hoping she was wrong, that there was some other explanation. But hearing him say it, hearing him give the betrayal a name, made it real in a way the lipstick stain hadn't. How long? 4 months. 4 months, a third of a year. All those nights he'd said he was handling business. All those late dinners he'd blamed on the family. All those mornings he'd left before she woke up. 4 months of her sleeping beside a stranger who was saving his real affection for someone else. Why? The word came out broken, and she hated herself for it. Dominic turned to fully face her, and the look in his eyes was worse than anger would have been. It was exhaustion mixed with something that looked almost like pity. Because she understands what this life actually is. She doesn't ask me to be something I'm not. She doesn't look at me like she's waiting for me to turn into someone softer, someone better. I never. You did. His voice was still quiet, but there was an edge to it now. Every time you suggested I transition into legitimate business, every time you flinched when I came home with blood on my hands, every time you tried to convince me that there was a version of me that could exist outside of what I am, Adriana felt something crack inside her chest. I married you. All of you. I knew what you were. You knew what you thought you could change. Dominic shook his head. Serena doesn't want to change me. She accepts me, respects what I do, doesn't try to make me into some sanitized version of myself that could never actually survive in this world. So that's it? Adriana's voice was rising now, years of controlled composure, starting to fracture. I'm too good for you? Too soft? I should have just embraced the violence, the blood, the fact that you kill people for a living, and then maybe you wouldn't have needed to find someone else? You should have been honest about what you could actually handle, instead of pretending. The accusation stung worse because part of it was true. She had struggled with his world, the casual brutality, the way life and death were discussed over dinner like stock prices, the knowledge that her husband's hands had ended people. But she'd tried. She'd swallowed her discomfort, learned the rules, played the part. Apparently, it hadn't been enough. Do you love her? Adriana asked. Dominic's silence was its own answer. I want you to leave, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Tonight. Pack a bag and get out. Something flashed across his face. Surprise, maybe, or anger. This is my home. This is our home, was our home, and I can't look at you right now without wanting to... She cut herself off, breathing hard. Just go, please. For a long moment, Dominic didn't move. Then he nodded once, sharp and final. I'll send someone for my things tomorrow. He turned and walked back into the penthouse, leaving Adriana alone on the terrace with the Manhattan skyline and the wreckage of her marriage. She waited until she heard the elevator doors close before she let herself cry. Great gasping sobs that shook her entire body. She'd known marrying into this world was dangerous. She'd prepared herself for violence, for betrayal from enemies, for the constant threat of death that hung over everyone in the Russo family. What she hadn't prepared for was this, the quiet, mundane devastation of being replaced. Her phone buzzed. A text from her sister, Angela. How's the party? Steal me some of that good champagne. Adriana stared at the message, trying to remember what normal felt like. When she'd been just a girl from Brooklyn with a nursing degree and student loans, before she'd met a dangerous man at a hospital where she was treating his injured cousin, before she'd fallen stupidly, recklessly in love. She couldn't tell Angela. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Her sister still thought Adriana had married up, had found security and luxury, and a man who would protect her from the world. The truth, that she'd traded one kind of vulnerability for another, was too bitter to speak out loud. Adriana went back inside. The party was still going, though several people had noticed her absence. Dominic was nowhere in sight, which meant he'd actually left. Vita Castellano, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who ran her own piece of the family's empire, appeared at her elbow. You look like you need a drink, Cara. I need about 6. Vita signaled a server, who appeared with champagne that probably cost more than Adriana's first car. Men are dogs, Vita said conversationally. Beautiful, sometimes useful, but ultimately dogs. You know this, yes? So people had noticed. Of course they had. Nothing stayed secret in this world for long. How long has everyone known? Adriana asked. About the Morelli girl. Maybe 2 months, but we thought... Vita paused, choosing her words carefully. We thought you knew, that you had an arrangement. An arrangement? Like it was business, like her marriage was just another negotiation with terms and conditions. Maybe in this world it was. I didn't know, Adriana said flatly. Vita's expression shifted into something almost sympathetic. Then you're a fool, but an honest one. That's rare. She lowered her voice. Be careful, Adriana. The Morelli family has been trying to strengthen their connection to the Russos for years. If Dominic is serious about this girl, you're not just dealing with an affair, you're dealing with politics. The warning settled into Adriana's stomach like ice. She'd been thinking about this as a personal betrayal, a marriage falling apart. But Vita was right. Nothing in this world was just personal. Every relationship was a treaty, every marriage an alliance. If Dominic replaced her with Serena Morelli, what did that mean for her position, for her safety? I should go, Adriana said. Stay. Vita's grip on her arm was gentle but firm. If you leave now, you look weak, wounded. They'll eat you alive. Stay, smile, and show them that you're not going anywhere without a fight. But Adriana didn't want to fight. She wanted to go home. Except home was the penthouse she'd shared with Dominic, and she didn't know if she could stand being there alone, surrounded by the ghost of what they'd been. She stayed anyway, smiled anyway, made conversation with people whose names she couldn't remember about topics she didn't care about, drank champagne that tasted like expensive nothing. And when Marco Russo, Dominic's cousin and underboss, pulled her aside near midnight, she was almost grateful for the distraction. You holding up? Marco asked. He was younger than Dominic by 3 years, with the same dark eyes but a softer edge. He'd always been kind to her in a way that felt genuine rather than political. Define holding up. Still vertical, still conscious, haven't murdered anyone. Marco's smile was brief. Look, I know it's none of my business, but Dominic's an idiot. Whatever he told you, whatever excuse he gave, he's an idiot. He said she understands him better. Marco's laugh was bitter. Serena Morelli understands power and money. That's not the same as understanding a person. He hesitated, then added, for what it's worth, you're good for him. Or you were. You made him remember there was something outside of all this, that he could be more than just the family enforcer. Apparently that's exactly what he didn't want. Maybe. Or maybe he's scared of what it means to want something beyond the life. Marco shrugged. Either way, you deserve better than being someone's second choice. The party finally wound down around 2 a.m. Adriana took a car service back to the penthouse, her mind spinning with everything Vita and Marco had said. Politics. Alliances. Power. She'd been naive, she realized, treating her marriage like it was something sacred, something separate from the business. But in Dominic's world, nothing was separate. Everything was leverage. The penthouse felt cavernous and empty. Dominic had taken some things. She could see the gaps in the closet, the missing toiletries in the bathroom. But most of his life was still here, tangled up with hers in ways that would take months to separate. Adriana poured herself a glass of water and stood in the kitchen, staring out at the pre-dawn city. She felt hollowed out, like someone had reached inside her chest and scooped out everything vital. Her phone rang. Unknown number. At 3 a.m, nothing good came from unknown numbers. Hello? Mrs. Russo. The voice was female, smooth, with the faintest hint of amusement. I hope I'm not calling too late. Who is this? Serena Morelli. I thought we should talk, woman to woman. Every muscle in Adriana's body went rigid. How did you get this number? Please. Your husband and I have been together for months. Did you think we didn't share everything? A pause, loaded with meaning. Well, almost everything. There are some things a man only tells his wife, or at least his ex-wife. I'm not his ex-wife. Not yet. But let's be realistic, Adriana. Can I call you Adriana? The marriage is over. You must know that. Tonight was just making it official. Adriana's hand tightened around the phone. What do you want? To be civil. I know this is difficult for you, but it doesn't have to be ugly. Dominic cares about you in his way. He doesn't want you to be hurt by all this. Neither do I. The audacity of it, the sheer, breathtaking audacity, would have been impressive if it wasn't so infuriating. You're sleeping with my husband and you're calling me at 3 a.m. to tell me you don't want me hurt? I'm calling to offer you an exit. Serena's voice stayed perfectly pleasant, like they were discussing brunch plans. Sign the divorce papers when they come. Don't make this complicated. In exchange, you'll be taken care of financially. A generous settlement, a place to live, an allowance. You won't want for anything. Except my husband. You never really had him, darling. Not the parts that matter. I'm just making official what's been true for months. Adriana felt something cold and dangerous settle into her bones. This wasn't just an affair. This was a coup, carefully planned and executed. Serena had probably been working on Dominic for longer than 4 months, slowly positioning herself, making Adriana look weak by comparison. And if I don't sign? Adriana asked quietly. Then things get messy. Lawyers, family meetings, public scenes. Your name dragged through every circle that matters. I'd rather avoid that. I think you would too. Go to hell. She hung up before Serena could respond. Her hands were shaking, rage and fear mixing into something she couldn't quite name. This was worse than betrayal. This was invasion, a hostile takeover of her entire life. Adriana grabbed her laptop and started searching for divorce lawyers. The first 3 names she tried, all recommended by friends outside the family, wouldn't return her calls. The 4th one did, but only to tell her apologetically that he couldn't take her case. May I ask why not? Adriana pressed. Conflict of interest. I'm sorry, Mrs. Russo. She tried 6 more. Same story. By the time the sun came up, Adriana understood what was happening. Dominic, or more likely Serena, had made sure every decent divorce attorney in the city was either already retained or unwilling to go against the Russo family. She was being boxed in, isolated. Her phone rang again. Marco this time. Don't go anywhere today, he said without preamble. Stay in the penthouse. What's happening? Family meeting. Tonight. They're going to discuss the situation. The situation. Like her marriage ending was a business problem to be solved. Will I be there? Adriana asked. Marco's pause told her everything. Probably not. This is internal family business. I'm family. You're... He trailed off, clearly struggling with how to phrase it. The marriage isn't dissolved yet, but until things are settled, your status is complicated. Complicated. In other words, she was no longer protected, no longer guaranteed a seat at the table. She'd gone from Dominic's wife to a problem to be managed overnight. Thanks for the warning, Adriana said. She spent the day in the penthouse, pacing, trying to think. Her bank accounts were still accessible, but for how long? If Dominic wanted to cut her off, he could do it with a phone call. The penthouse was in his name. The car was in his name. Even her credit cards were linked to his accounts. 3 years of marriage, and she'd let herself become completely financially dependent. She'd had her nursing license, had planned to go back to work eventually, but Dominic had discouraged it. You don't need to work, he'd said. Focus on being here, being present. That's what I need from you. What he'd really meant, make yourself dependent so you can never leave. Around noon, the building concierge called up. Mrs. Russo, there's a gentleman here to see you, says he's your new attorney. I didn't hire anyone. He says it's been arranged. Should I send him up? Adriana almost said no, but she needed a lawyer, and if someone was offering, even if she didn't know who or why, she couldn't afford to be proud. The man who appeared at her door was in his 60s, silver-haired, wearing an expensive suit that had clearly been tailored decades ago and maintained perfectly. He introduced himself as Leonard Castellano, and Adriana's stomach dropped. You're Vita's husband. Was. She divorced me 15 years ago, kept the name, and we stayed friends. Strange arrangement, but it works. Leonard smiled gently. She called me last night, asked me to come out of retirement for one last case. Why would she do that? Because she likes you, because she thinks what's happening to you is wrong, and because she's been in this world long enough to recognize a power play when she sees one. Leonard set his briefcase on the counter. May I sit? They settled in the living room. Leonard pulled out a legal pad and pen, actual pen and paper, not a tablet. Tell me everything, he said. So Adriana did. The affair, the confrontation, Serena's phone call, the lawyers who wouldn't take her case. Leonard listened without interrupting, occasionally jotting notes. When she finished, he set down his pen and looked at her seriously. Mrs. Russo, I need you to understand something. This isn't just a divorce. What the Morelli family is doing, what Serena is orchestrating, is a strategic repositioning. If she successfully replaces you as Dominic's wife, the alliance between the Russo and Morelli families strengthens considerably. Territory, resources, influence, all of it shifts. I know. Do you? Because what that means is that you're not just dealing with a husband who fell for another woman. You're dealing with people who have a vested interest in removing you from the picture entirely. The way he said removing made Adriana's blood run cold. You think I'm in danger? I think you should be very, very careful. And I think you should start documenting everything, every conversation, every interaction. If things go wrong, and they might, you'll need evidence. Evidence of what? Leonard met her eyes. Of whatever they decide to accuse you of. The family meeting happened that night in a restaurant the Russos owned in Midtown. Adriana wasn't invited, but Marco called her afterward. It's bad, he said bluntly. Serena was there, with her father. They're pushing hard for Dominic to make the marriage dissolution official. And they're offering— He stopped. What are they offering? Brooklyn. The Morellis would cede their Brooklyn territory to the Russos in exchange for the marriage alliance. Brooklyn. An entire borough, millions in revenue, strategic positioning. Adriana's life was being weighed against real estate and drug routes, and apparently the real estate was winning. What did Dominic say? She asked, though part of her didn't want to know. He didn't say no. That night, Adriana barely slept. She kept thinking about Serena's phone call, about Leonard's warning, about the way her entire world had shifted in less than 48 hours. She'd gone from Dominic Russo's wife to a liability, from protected to expendable. Around 4 a.m., she got up and went to the bathroom. Felt dizzy, nauseous, thought it was stress until she realized she was late. 3 weeks late. She took the pregnancy test with shaking hands, already knowing what it would say, positive. Adriana stared at the 2 pink lines, her mind reeling. A baby. She was carrying Dominic's baby. The timing was horrific. He'd probably gotten her pregnant right around when he'd started seeing Serena. The irony was almost funny, except nothing about this was funny. She had to tell him, didn't she? He deserved to know he was going to be a father, even if their marriage was imploding, even if he'd chosen someone else. But as Adriana sat on the cold bathroom floor, another thought crept in. What if she didn't tell him? What if she just left, disappeared, raised this baby far away from the Russo family and their violence and their politics? She could do it. Take what cash she had, leave the city, start over somewhere Dominic would never find her. It would mean giving up everything, her name, her connections, any claim to the life she'd built. But maybe that life was already gone anyway. The decision felt too big to make at 4 a.m. Adriana went back to bed and lay awake until dawn, one hand pressed against her still flat stomach, feeling the weight of 2 lives instead of 1. When her phone rang at 7 a.m., she almost didn't answer. But it was Marco again, and he sounded urgent. You need to get out of there, he said. Now. Don't pack, don't stop, just go. What happened? Someone leaked information to the feds about the family's operations, bank accounts, shipping routes, names, everything. Adriana's heart stopped. Who? That's the problem. The leak is being traced back to you. That's impossible. I don't even know that information. I know, but someone's made it look like you do. Your email, your laptop. They're saying you've been gathering evidence for months, that you're working with federal prosecutors. This was it, the accusation Leonard had warned her about. They weren't just pushing her out, they were framing her as a traitor. If the family believed she'd betrayed them, divorce would be the least of her problems. Marco, I swear to you, I believe you, but it doesn't matter what I believe. Get out of the penthouse, go somewhere public, somewhere with witnesses. And call Leonard. He needs to know about this. Adriana grabbed her purse, threw on clothes, and ran for the elevator. Her mind was racing, trying to make sense of how this had happened. Someone had access to her accounts, her devices. Someone had planted evidence. Serena. It had to be. This was too coordinated, too perfect. The affair, the isolation, and now the frame job. Serena wasn't just replacing her, she was erasing her. The elevator doors opened in the lobby. Adriana stepped out and froze. Dominic was there, standing by the entrance with 2 men she recognized as family enforcers. His face was stone, his dark eyes fixed on her with an expression she'd never seen before. Cold, absolute, lethal. Adriana, he said quietly, we need to talk. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but there was nowhere to go, and running would only make her look more guilty. I didn't do whatever you think I did, she said. Then you won't mind answering some questions. It wasn't a request. The 2 enforcers moved to flank her, and Adriana realized with terrible clarity that she wasn't leaving this building as a free woman, not unless she could convince Dominic that she wasn't a traitor. And based on the ice in his eyes, that was going to be impossible. The conference room was in the basement of a building Adriana had never seen before. Industrial, anonymous, the kind of place where screams wouldn't carry. Two chairs faced each other across a metal table. Dominic sat in one. The enforcers pushed her into the other. "Leave us," Dominic said. The men hesitated. "Boss, if she's—" "I said leave." They went. The door closed with a heavy click that might have been a lock. Adriana's pulse hammered in her throat, but she kept her spine straight, her face calm. Fear was currency in this world. She wouldn't spend it cheaply. Dominic leaned back, studying her like she was a stranger. Maybe she was. Maybe they'd both been strangers all along, playing roles they'd convinced themselves were real. "How long have you been talking to the FBI?" he asked. "I haven't. We have emails. From your account. To an agent named Patricia Moreno. Detailed information about shipment routes, financial accounts, names of people who've done work for the family." His voice stayed level, but something dangerous moved behind his eyes. 3 months of correspondence. You want to tell me that's fabricated? Yes, because I never sent those emails. I didn't even know that information existed. Your password was used, your IP address, your laptop. Adriana forced herself to breathe slowly. Leonard had warned her this was coming, but hearing it laid out so precisely made her stomach turn. Whoever had set this up had done it carefully, building a case that would hold up under scrutiny. "Someone's framing me," she said. "You have to know that. What I know is that my wife suddenly has a change of heart about our marriage right when federal investigators start circling. Convenient timing. I had a change of heart because you've been sleeping with someone else for 4 months. Plus, something flickered across Dominic's face. Guilt, maybe, or just irritation at being reminded. That's separate. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like someone wanted me out of the way and made sure I'd have no credibility when I tried to defend myself. Who? Who would do that? Adriana met his eyes. The woman who called me at 3 a.m. to tell me I should sign divorce papers and disappear quietly. The woman who was at your family meeting last night with her father, offering you Brooklyn in exchange for a marriage alliance. The woman who has everything to gain from me being labeled a traitor. Dominic's expression hardened. Serena wouldn't what? Lie? Manipulate? Use you to strengthen her family's position? Adriana laughed, the sound bitter. Wake up, Dominic. She's been playing you from the start. The affair, the framing, all of it. I'm just collateral damage. You're paranoid. I'm informed. Your cousin warned me yesterday that I was in the middle of a power play. Vita Castellano told me the same thing 2 days ago, but you're so busy being flattered by a woman who tells you exactly what you want to hear that you can't see what's happening. Dominic stood abruptly, the chair scraping against concrete. He paced to the far wall, hands shoved in his pockets, tension radiating off him like heat. When he turned back, his face was carved from stone. 3 men are dead, he said quietly. Ambushed last night during a routine pickup. Someone told the Volkov crew exactly where to be and when. The leak came from inside. From information only family would have. Adriana's blood went cold. You think I think someone with access to our systems gave that information to the Russians. And all the evidence points to you. Then the evidence is lying. Evidence doesn't lie. People do. She stood too, her hands flat on the table between them. I have never lied to you. Not once in 3 years. I've accepted things I didn't understand, swallowed my fear, stood beside you when every instinct told me to run. I loved you. Completely. And you threw that away for someone who's using you. Serena is a Morelli. Her family has been trying to absorb your territory for years. What better way than to marry their daughter to the head of the Russo family? But first they had to get rid of the current wife. So they create an affair, isolate me, frame me for betrayal, and then sit back while you destroy me yourself. Dominic's jaw worked. For a moment, just a flash, doubt crossed his face. Then it was gone, replaced by the cold certainty that had made him one of the most feared men in the city. You're good, he said. I'll give you that, but I'm not stupid enough to fall for it. Fall for what? The truth? Manipulation. You're trying to make me doubt her, doubt myself. Classic deflection. He moved closer, until they were separated by only the width of the table. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me everything you gave to the FBI, every detail, every name. And then you're going to help us contain the damage. I can't tell you something that didn't happen. Then you're useless to me. The words landed like a physical blow. Adriana had known their marriage was over, but hearing him say it, hearing the finality in his voice, made it real in a way nothing else had. So what now? She asked. You kill me? Make an example of the traitor wife? Dominic's expression didn't change. That depends on how cooperative you are. The door opened. One of the enforcers leaned in. Boss, the family's waiting. Give me 5 minutes. The door closed again. Dominic pulled out his phone, scrolled through something, then set it on the table facing her. It was an email, supposedly from her account, detailing shipment information with timestamps and locations. The kind of intelligence that would get people killed. Explain that, he said. Adriana stared at the screen. The email address was hers. The writing style even sounded like her. Formal, precise, the way she'd learned to communicate in this world. But she'd never written it, never sent it, never even knew those details existed. I can't explain it except to say someone hacked my account, used my laptop maybe, or cloned my credentials. It's not impossible. She looked up at him. You know me, Dominic. You know I'm not capable of this. I thought I knew you. Turns out I was wrong about a lot of things. Her hands clenched into fists. You were wrong about thinking I needed to be changed, about believing someone else could understand you better. But you were never wrong about my loyalty. I would have died for you, for this family. That's the one thing I never lied about. Past tense? You made it past tense when you chose her. The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything they'd lost. Finally, Dominic picked up his phone and headed for the door. Wait here, he said. Someone will come get you. For what? He paused without turning around. The family needs to hear your version. After that, they'll decide what happens next. Then he was gone, and Adriana was alone in the basement room with her fear and her fury and the terrible knowledge that no matter what she said, they'd already made up their minds. An hour passed, maybe 2. Time became elastic in the windowless room, stretching and contracting until Adriana wasn't sure if she'd been there for minutes or days. She kept her hand pressed against her stomach, thinking about the pregnancy test, about the tiny cluster of cells that didn't know yet how much danger it was in. When the door finally opened, it wasn't Dominic. It was Marco, looking grim, with Vita Castellano behind him. Come on, Marco said. Quickly. Where? No questions. Just move. Vita caught her arm as they hustled her into the hallway. Did you tell him about the baby? Adriana's step faltered. How did you? I've been around long enough to recognize the signs. Does Dominic know? No. Good. Don't tell him. Not yet. Right now, that's the only leverage you have. They moved through corridors that all looked the same. Concrete, fluorescent lights, the smell of damp, and something chemical. Finally, they emerged into what looked like a warehouse stacked with crates and machinery. In the center, chairs had been arranged in a semicircle. The family was already there. Adriana recognized most of them. Antonio Russo, Dominic's uncle and the official head of the family, silver-haired and sharp-eyed. Carlo Benedetti, who ran their gambling operations. The Castellano brothers, Vita's sons. And off to one side, looking perfectly composed, Serena Morelli and her father Vincent. Serena was beautiful in that effortless way some women managed. Dark hair pulled back, minimal makeup, wearing a black dress that probably cost more than Adriana's engagement ring. She looked like she belonged there, comfortable, in the spotlight, while Adriana felt like an intruder in her own life. Dominic stood near his uncle, his face unreadable. When Adriana entered, his eyes flicked to her briefly before looking away. Sit, Antonio said, gesturing to a chair placed opposite the semicircle, like she was on trial. Adriana sat, kept her back straight, her expression neutral. Vita and Marco positioned themselves near the back, silent witnesses. Antonio leaned forward, fingers steepled. You understand why you're here. I'm being accused of betraying the family, of working with federal investigators, of getting 3 men killed. Adriana's voice stayed level. All of which is a lie. Evidence suggests otherwise. Evidence can be manufactured, Vincent Morelli spoke up, his voice smooth. Perhaps. But the emails came from your account, Mrs. Russo. The leak happened from your devices. If someone else is responsible, you'll need to provide proof. How am I supposed to provide proof of something I didn't do? You're asking me to prove a negative. We're asking you to explain, Antonio said, how classified family information ended up in federal hands with your digital fingerprints all over it. Adriana took a breath. Someone with technical skills hacked my accounts, planted evidence, made it look like I was communicating with investigators when I wasn't. The timing coincides perfectly with, she hesitated, then committed, with the affair, with Dominic's relationship with Serena. Every eye in the room turned to Serena, who looked more amused than offended. Are you accusing me of framing you? Serena asked, her tone light. I'm saying the evidence appeared right when it would benefit you most, right when you needed me discredited so you could take my place. That's quite a conspiracy theory. It's not a theory if it's true. Antonio raised a hand, cutting off Serena's response. Do you have any proof of this alleged framing? Do you have any proof I actually sent those emails? Real proof? Not just digital records that could have been faked. The burden of proof isn't on us, Carlo said. You're the one accused. In a real court, I'd be innocent until proven guilty. But this isn't a real court, is it? You've already decided I'm guilty. This is just theater. Dominic finally spoke. If you're innocent, explain the offshore accounts, the ones opened in your name 6 months ago, the ones receiving regular deposits from unknown sources. Adriana's stomach dropped. What accounts? Don't play stupid. We found them this morning. 5 accounts. Cayman Islands, totaling close to $2 million. I don't have accounts in the Cayman Islands. I don't have $2 million. Someone does, and it's under your name. This was worse than she'd thought. They hadn't just planted emails. They'd created an entire financial trail. Money that could be traced back to her, that made it look like she'd been paid off for information. Let me see the account records, Adriana said. Why? So you can come up with a better story? So I can prove they're fake. If they're real accounts, they'll have transaction histories, IP logs, authentication records. I can show you I never accessed them. Antonio considered this. Reasonable. We'll have our people pull the detailed records. He nodded to someone behind Adriana, who left quickly. In the meantime, there's the matter of the recording. Adriana's blood went cold. What recording? Vincent Morelli produced a phone, set it on a small table, and pressed play. Adriana's own voice filled the warehouse, tinny but unmistakable. Shipment arrives Thursday, 11 p.m., Pier 47. 3 men handling it. Russo crew, not family. Should be easy to intercept? The recording cut off. Silence crashed down like a wave. That's not me, Adriana said, but her voice sounded weak even to herself. Voice analysis confirms it's you, Vincent said. 98% match. Then the analysis is wrong, or the recording is altered. I never said those words. Serena leaned forward, her expression sympathetic in a way that made Adriana want to scream. I know this must be difficult, but denying it only makes things worse. If you cooperate, tell us who you were working with. The family might show mercy. I don't need mercy because I didn't do anything. The evidence says otherwise. The evidence is lying. Antonio's hand came down on the arm of his chair, not hard, but the sound cut through the warehouse like a gunshot. Enough. Mrs. Russo, you are accused of betraying this family, of providing information to our enemies that resulted in the deaths of 3 of our men. The evidence against you is substantial. If you have a defense, now is the time to offer it. Adriana looked around the room. Most faces were closed, already convinced. A few, Marco, Vita, maybe 1 or 2 others, showed doubt, but not enough to matter. And Dominic stood there like a statue, his face revealing nothing. She had 1 card left to play. 1 piece of information that might change the equation. But using it felt like surrendering, like admitting defeat. Still, survival trumped pride. I'm pregnant, Adriana said. The silence that followed was absolute. Even Vincent Morelli looked surprised. Dominic's head snapped up, his eyes meeting hers for the first time since the meeting started. What? I'm pregnant. About 6 weeks. I found out 2 days ago. She kept her gaze on Antonio, not Dominic. So, before you decide what to do with me, you should know that you're also deciding the fate of the next generation of the Russo family. Antonio sat back slowly. Does Dominic know? He does now. The old man turned to his nephew. Is this true? Dominic's expression was complicated. Shock, anger, something that might have been fear. I didn't know. But it could be yours. Timing fits. His voice was tight. Serena's carefully neutral expression finally cracked, just for a second. Fury flashed across her face before she controlled it. How convenient! She's accused of treason and suddenly discovers she's pregnant. I took the test 3 days ago, Adriana said coldly, before any of this started, before I even knew about the accusations. Convenient timing, nonetheless. Reality isn't convenient or inconvenient. It just is. Antonio looked between Adriana and Dominic. This complicates things. It doesn't change the evidence, Vincent said quickly. Pregnant or not, she's still accused of betraying the family. But it means we can't act rashly. Antonio's tone was firm. If she's carrying Russo blood, that child is family, regardless of what the mother may have done. You can't seriously be considering what I'm considering, Vincent, is protecting family interests, which includes potential heirs. Antonio stood. We'll continue this tomorrow. Mrs. Russo, you'll remain in custody until we verify your claims, both about the pregnancy and the accounts. Dominic, you'll accompany her to a medical facility for confirmation. I'm not going anywhere with him, Adriana said. That wasn't a request. Antonio's eyes were steel. Marco, Vita, you'll escort them. Make sure there are no problems. The meeting broke up in murmurs and tension. Serena left quickly, her father trailing behind, both their faces tight with barely suppressed anger. Adriana stood on shaking legs, feeling Dominic's eyes on her but refusing to look at him. Marco appeared at her elbow. Come on, there's a clinic we use. Discreet. The drive happened in silence. Marco drove, Vita in the passenger seat, Adriana and Dominic in the back with careful space between them. The clinic was in Queens, unmarked, the kind of place that asked no questions and kept no records. A doctor who looked tired and underpaid took Adriana into an exam room, drew blood, did an ultrasound, asked questions in a monotone that suggested he'd done this many times before for many different reasons. 6 weeks, he confirmed, showing her the ultrasound image. A tiny blob, barely visible, but there. Real. Healthy, as far as I can tell at this stage. Adriana stared at the screen. Her baby, hers and Dominic's, created in what must have been one of their last times together before everything fell apart. I need to tell the father, the doctor said. He's outside. The doctor stepped into the waiting room. Adriana heard his voice, low and professional, then Dominic's sharp question. When the doctor returned, Dominic was behind him. Can we have a minute? Dominic asked the doctor. 2 minutes. I have other patients. The door closed. Dominic stood near it, like he wasn't sure if he should come closer. Why didn't you tell me? When? When you were confessing your affair? When you were accusing me of treason? When exactly was I supposed to work it into conversation? Before any of that. I found out 3 days ago. You haven't exactly been accessible. He moved closer, his eyes on the ultrasound screen. Is it really mine? The question shouldn't have hurt. She'd expected it, but it did anyway. Yes. Unless you think I've been sleeping around in addition to betraying the family to federal investigators. Don't. Don't what? Be bitter? Be angry? You've decided I'm a traitor based on manufactured evidence, and now you're questioning whether your own child is actually yours. I think I'm entitled to some bitterness. Dominic dragged a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. This changes things. Does it? Or does it just complicate your plans with Serena? Stop making this about her. It is about her. She's the one who framed me, Dominic. She's the one who planted that evidence, created those accounts, faked that recording. And you're so blind to it because she makes you feel powerful and dangerous and all the things you think you need to be. You don't know what you're talking about. I know she called me at 3 a.m. to gloat. I know her father was at that meeting, salivating over Brooklyn like it was already his. I know she looked genuinely furious when I announced the pregnancy because it ruins her plan. Adriana stood, getting in his face. Wake up, Dominic. She's using you, and you're letting her because it's easier than admitting you made a mistake. For a moment, something raw crossed his face. Doubt, maybe, or just exhaustion. Then the walls came back up. You should rest, he said. We're not done with the investigation. Am I still a prisoner? You're still accused. Same thing. The doctor knocked and came back in. Everything looks good. Prenatal vitamins, regular checkups, avoid stress. He looked between them. Though I'm guessing stress is unavoidable in your line of work. They drove back in the same heavy silence. When they reached the warehouse, Antonio was waiting with several other family members. The pregnancy is confirmed, Dominic announced. Antonio nodded slowly. Then we have a situation. Adriana, you'll be kept under supervision until this is resolved, for your protection and the child's. Protection or imprisonment? Both, if necessary. Vita stepped forward. She'll stay with me. I have space, security, and it's neutral ground. Antonio considered. Agreed. Marco, you'll coordinate security. No one in or out without approval. Adriana, if you try to run, it will be taken as an admission of guilt. I have nowhere to run to. Then we understand each other. Adriana was taken to Vita's brownstone in Brooklyn Heights, a place she'd visited before for dinners and parties, but never imagined as a prison. Vita gave her a room on the 3rd floor, comfortable but with bars on the windows. For your safety, Vita said, though they both knew it was about containment. That night, alone, Adriana finally let herself break. She cried for her marriage, for the future she'd imagined, for the baby growing inside her who would be born into chaos. She cried until her throat was raw and her eyes swollen. Then she stopped crying and started thinking. If she was going to survive this, if her baby was going to survive this, she needed to fight back, not with words or pleas, but with proof, real proof that someone had framed her. The next morning, Leonard Castellano arrived with his briefcase and his legal pad. Vita called me, he said, told me what happened at the family meeting. We have work to do. They spent hours going through everything, the emails, the accounts, the recording. Leonard took notes, asked questions, built a timeline. The offshore accounts are sophisticated, he said. Whoever set them up knew what they were doing, but everything leaves a trail. We just need to find it. How long will that take? Days, maybe weeks. Leonard looked at her seriously. The baby buys you time, but not indefinitely. Eventually, Antonio will demand resolution. We need evidence before then. And if we can't find it, then you need to consider other options. Witness protection, possibly. Disappearing. Starting over somewhere the Russo family can't reach. With a baby. With a baby. Adriana pressed her hand to her stomach. I won't let them take my child. Then we fight, and we hope we find something before they lose patience. 3 days passed in Vita's brownstone. Adriana was fed, guarded, and isolated. No phone, no computer, no contact with the outside world. Marco visited daily to check on her, but even he was cautious, aware that association with an accused traitor could damage his standing. On the 4th day, everything changed. Adriana was in her room when she heard shouting downstairs. Then gunfire, sharp cracks that made her drop to the floor instinctively. More shots, closer now. Someone screamed. Her door burst open. One of Vita's guards grabbed her arm. We need to move. Now. What's happening? Russians. They're hitting the house. He dragged her into the hallway. More gunfire below, breaking glass, voices shouting in accented English. They made it to the stairs before someone appeared at the bottom, a man in tactical gear with a rifle. The guard shoved Adriana behind him and fired. The Russian went down, but 2 more appeared. The guard took a bullet to the chest and fell, blood spreading across his shirt. Adriana ran. Back down the hallway, through a door, up another flight of stairs to the roof access. Behind her, heavy footsteps and Russian voices. They were coming. She hit the roof door, burst through into cold air and city sounds. The brownstone had a flat roof with a low wall around it. Nowhere to go but over. Adriana looked down. 3 stories, an alley below, trash bins, maybe enough to break her fall. Maybe not. The door behind her slammed open. 3 men emerged, weapons raised. She put her hands up slowly. I'm not armed. The lead man said something in Russian. One of the others laughed. They moved closer, and Adriana saw what was in their eyes. They hadn't come to take her prisoner. "Wait," she said. "Wait, please." Gunfire erupted from the adjacent building. One of the Russians went down, then another. The third turned to fire back and caught a bullet in the head. He dropped like a stone. Adriana stood frozen, hands still raised, waiting for the next shot to be hers. Instead, Dominic appeared on the roof of the next building, rifle in hand. Behind him, more of his men emerged, setting up a perimeter. "Get down!" he shouted. Adriana dropped. More gunfire below, the Russians retreating, the Russo crew pursuing. Then silence, heavy and ringing. Dominic crossed to her building via a maintenance ladder, dropped onto the roof beside her. "Are you hit?" She shook her head, unable to speak. "The house is clear. They're gone." He helped her up, his hands surprisingly gentle. "Why were they here? Why did the Volkov crew target you?" "I don't know." But even as she said it, Adriana understood. Someone had told the Russians where to find her, someone who wanted her dead before she could prove her innocence, someone who was running out of time. Dominic kept his hand on her arm as they descended into the brownstone, his grip firm but not cruel. The house smelled like gunpowder and copper. 3 bodies lay in the foyer, 2 Russians, one of Vita's guards. Blood pooled on the hardwood floors that had probably been polished that morning. Vita appeared from the kitchen, a pistol still in her hand, her hair disheveled but her eyes sharp. "Everyone accounted for?" "3 dead Russians, 1 escaped," Marco reported, coming in from the back. "We've got people tracking him." "Let him go," Dominic said. "I want him to report back." Vita raised an eyebrow. "You want the Volkovs to know we were ready?" "I want them to know attacking what's mine has consequences." The words hung in the air. Adriana pulled her arm free. "I'm not yours. Not anymore. You're carrying my child. That makes you mine until I say otherwise." "Romantic." His jaw tightened, but before he could respond, Antonio arrived with a contingent of armed men. The old man surveyed the carnage with the detached interest of someone who'd seen it all before. 3 dead, he said. How did they know she was here? The question everyone had been avoiding. Vita's brownstone was supposed to be secure, its location known only to trusted family, yet the Russians had walked right to the door. "We have a leak," Marco said quietly. "Obviously." Antonio turned to Adriana. "Or she arranged this. Another distraction while her real handlers move." "If I'd arranged this," Adriana said, her voice ice, "I wouldn't have been on that roof about to get shot." "Maybe they were cleaning up loose ends. You've served your purpose. Or maybe someone in your organization is feeding information to the Volkovs and trying to make it look like me." She met Antonio's eyes. "Someone who benefits from me being dead before I can prove my innocence." "You're suggesting one of us is the traitor?" "I'm suggesting you look at who has the most to gain from framing me and then killing me before the truth comes out." Dominic stepped between them. "Uncle, we need to move her. Somewhere more secure. Somewhere only the 2 of us know about." Antonio considered. "You're volunteering to guard her personally?" "She's carrying my child. I'm not leaving that to anyone else." "Even though you think she's a traitor?" "Even then. If she is, I'll handle it myself. If she isn't—" He paused. "Then we need to find out who is." The admission was small, barely there, but Adriana caught it. The first crack in his certainty. Not belief in her innocence, not yet, but doubt about her guilt. It wasn't much, but it was something. Antonio nodded slowly. "Fine, take her. But Dominic, if you're wrong about this, if she's playing you, I know what's at stake." They left within the hour. Dominic drove, taking routes that doubled back on themselves, watching mirrors, making sure they weren't followed. Adriana sat in the passenger seat, exhausted and wired, her hand pressed against her stomach where the baby grew, oblivious to the chaos. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Somewhere no one knows about. A place I bought years ago under a shell company. No family connections, no paper trail." "Why would you need something like that?" He glanced at her. "In this life, you always need an exit strategy, even from your own family." They drove for 2 hours, leaving the city behind, heading upstate into dense forest and winding roads. The safe house turned out to be a cabin on 20 isolated acres, modern but designed to look rustic, with security cameras hidden in the trees and reinforced doors that could withstand a small army. Inside, it was surprisingly comfortable, furniture that didn't match but worked, a kitchen stocked with non-perishables, a generator in case the power failed. Dominic did a sweep of the perimeter while Adriana collapsed onto the couch, every muscle in her body shaking with delayed shock. When he came back in, he found her crying silently, her face buried in her hands. "Adriana, don't." She didn't look up. "Don't comfort me, don't apologize, don't do whatever you're about to do. I just need a minute." He sat in the chair across from her, waiting. The crying eventually stopped, replaced by the kind of exhaustion that went bone deep. Adriana wiped her face with the back of her hand. "I could have died today," she said. "Our baby could have died. And you still don't believe me." "I'm starting to have questions." "Questions aren't belief. It's more than I had yesterday." Dominic leaned forward, elbows on his knees.
The attack doesn't make sense if you're actually working with the Volkovs. They wouldn't try to kill their own asset. Unless Antonio was right and they were cleaning up. Maybe, but the timing's wrong. If they wanted you dead, they could have done it quieter. This felt like a message, like someone wanted to make sure you didn't live long enough to defend yourself.
Adriana looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something she hadn't seen in days. The man she'd married was still in there somewhere, buried under suspicion and anger, but not completely gone. "Serena," she said, "it's her. It's always been her." "Keep saying that." "Because it's true." "Think about it, Dominic. The affair starts, I'm isolated, then suddenly evidence appears that I'm a traitor, right when her family needs a stronger alliance with yours. Right when Brooklyn's on the table, she creates the problem, me, and then offers herself as the solution. Serena doesn't have the technical skills to hack accounts or fake recordings. No, but she has money, connections. The Morellis have been in this game long enough to know people who can do anything for the right price." Dominic stood, paced to the window. Outside, darkness had fallen, the trees just shadows against the sky. "If you're right, if she's really behind all this, then I've been played." "Yes." Adriana's voice was flat. "Completely and thoroughly played. She found your weakness, your need to be accepted for exactly what you are, without judgment, and she exploited it. The affair wasn't about you, Dominic. It was about positioning herself to take my place." He turned back to her, and for the first time since this nightmare started, she saw real uncertainty in his eyes. "How do we prove it?" "I don't know, but we need to move fast." Leonard was looking into the offshore accounts, trying to trace who actually opened them. "If we can find that connection, we can't contact Leonard. Any communication could be intercepted. Then what do we do? Just hide here while Serena consolidates her position?" Dominic was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone, scrolled through contacts, and made a call. "It's me. I need you to do something, and you can't tell anyone. Not Antonio, not the family, just you." Adriana couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but from Dominic's responses it sounded like Marco. "The offshore account's in Adriana's name. I need you to pull the detailed records, IP addresses, authentication logs, initial setup, everything. And I need you to look into Serena Morelli's financial activity for the past year, quietly." He listened, his expression hardening. "I don't care if it's sensitive. Either she's clean and we put this to rest, or she's not and we need to know. Can you do it or not?" Another pause. Then, "Good. You have 24 hours. And Marco, if anyone asks what you're doing, you're investigating Adriana's connections. Nothing about Serena." He hung up and looked at Adriana. "Marco will dig. He's good with financials, and he has access to family resources. He's also loyal to Antonio. He's loyal to the truth. Or at least I hope he is." Dominic sat back down, suddenly looking exhausted. "If I'm wrong about this, if you're actually guilty, I'm not. But if you are, I've just compromised an investigation and put my cousin at risk, so you better hope you're telling the truth." "I am." They sat in heavy silence. Finally, Adriana asked the question that had been burning in her chest since the rooftop. "Why did you come? When the Russians attacked, you could have let them take me, solved your problem. You're carrying my child." "That's the only reason?" He met her eyes. "I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe some part of me isn't ready to believe that the woman I married, the woman I loved, could betray me that completely, even if the evidence says otherwise. You loved me past tense? You know what I mean. Do I? Because from where I'm sitting, you threw away 3 years for someone who tells you pretty lies. And now that it's convenient to doubt her, you're suddenly willing to investigate. That's not fair, Adriana laughed, sharp and bitter. None of this is fair, Dominic. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been you staying faithful to your wife. Fair would have been you believing me when I said I was being framed. Fair would have been you protecting me instead of letting your family put me on trial. I'm protecting you now because of the baby, not because you actually believe in me. He didn't deny it, couldn't probably. The truth sat between them like a third person in the room. Get some rest, Dominic said finally. There's a bedroom upstairs. I'll take the couch. How chivalrous. Adriana, I'm going. She stood, every joint aching. Wake me if Marco calls. The bedroom was clean and impersonal, the kind of space that had never been lived in. Adriana lay on the bed, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling, her hand on her stomach. The baby couldn't be more than an inch long, barely formed, but already it had saved her life. The family wouldn't kill a pregnant woman carrying Russo blood, not without absolute certainty of guilt. But that protection had an expiration date. Eventually the baby would be born, and if Adriana couldn't prove her innocence by then, they'd take the child and eliminate her. She'd seen it happen to other women in this world, mothers who'd outlived their usefulness, who'd made mistakes or crossed lines. Their children were raised by the family while they disappeared. Adriana wouldn't let that happen. She'd die first, or kill whoever stood between her and freedom. She must have fallen asleep because the next thing she knew, Dominic was shaking her shoulder gently. Marco called. You need to hear this. Downstairs, Dominic put his phone on speaker. Marco's voice crackled through, tense and urgent. I found something. The offshore accounts. They weren't opened from Adriana's IP address. The login credentials were spoofed to look like her devices, but the actual access points are scattered. Cafes, libraries, public Wi-Fi, all in Manhattan, but nowhere Adriana was at those times. How do you know where I was? Adriana asked. Because I cross-referenced with family security footage. We keep tabs on everyone, including wives. On the days those accounts were accessed, you were at charity events, family dinners, the penthouse. Never at the locations where the accounts were actually opened. Relief crashed through Adriana so hard she had to sit down. Then I couldn't have done it. The accounts were definitely set up to frame you, Marco confirmed. But here's where it gets interesting. I dug into the financial trails, followed the money backward. The fees for setting up the accounts, the deposits, all of it traces back to a shell company. And that shell company is owned by someone you know. Who? Dominic's voice was sharp. Serena's cousin, Paolo Morelli. He runs their tech division. The guy's a genius with computers and he hates the Russos. Has for years, ever since his brother got killed in a territory dispute. The pieces were falling into place. Adriana felt vindicated and furious at once. So Serena used her cousin to frame me. Looks like it. And there's more. I pulled Serena's phone records from our surveillance. In the past 3 months, she's had regular contact with someone in the Volkov organization. Viktor Sokolov, their tech specialist. Same guy who'd have the skills to fake that recording of your voice. Dominic's face had gone stone cold. The expression Adriana recognized from the rare times someone betrayed him badly enough to warrant personal attention. You're saying Serena's been working with the Volkovs? Either working with them or using them. My guess is she hired Victor to create the evidence against Adriana. The Russians get paid, she gets what she wants. Classic outsourcing. The attack today might have been Victor trying to cover his tracks, clean up the evidence before anyone could piece it together. Or it might have been Serena panicking, trying to eliminate Adriana before the truth came out. Adriana stood on shaking legs. We need to take this to Antonio. Show him the proof. Not yet, Dominic said. If we go to Antonio with half a case, the Morellis will bury the evidence. We need everything. Every connection, every transaction, every lie. Airtight. How long will that take? Marco's voice came through the speaker. I can have a full report in 48 hours, but you need to stay hidden. If Serena knows we're investigating, she'll destroy what's left of the trail. Do it, Dominic said. And Marco, be careful. If the Morellis find out what you're doing, I know. I'll be smart about it. The call ended. Adriana turned to Dominic, seeing the war happening behind his eyes. Anger, betrayal, the slow, horrible realization that he'd been manipulated. You were right, he said quietly, about all of it. And He stopped, his jaw working. I chose her over you, believed her lies over your truth, put you through hell because I was too proud to see I was being used. Yes, you did all of that. I'm sorry. The apology hung between them. Adriana wanted to accept it, wanted to let the relief of being believed wash away the past days of terror and isolation. But the wound was too fresh, the betrayal too deep. Sorry doesn't fix this, she said. Sorry doesn't give me back the nights I spent thinking you might kill me, or the moment on that roof when I thought I'd die before proving my innocence. Sorry is just a word, Dominic. It doesn't change what you did. I know. Do you? Because you're not just apologizing for an affair. You're apologizing for letting your mistress frame me for treason, for putting me on trial in front of your family, for making me prove I deserve to live. I know, he said again, his voice rough, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to make it right. But right now, we need to focus on surviving. Serena knows Marco's digging. She'll move fast. He was right, as much as Adriana hated to admit it. Personal reckonings could wait. Survival came first. They spent the next 2 days in the cabin, waiting for Marco's report. Dominic monitored news and family communications from burner phones, piecing together what was happening in the city. The official story was that Adriana had disappeared, possibly fled to avoid judgment. The Morellis were pushing hard for a final ruling, wanting her declared a traitor in absentia so Dominic could move forward with Serena. They're planning an engagement announcement, Dominic said, reading a text from Marco. 3 days from now, public, big press, showing family unity. Adriana's hands clenched. Let me guess, right after Antonio officially dissolves our marriage. That's the timeline they're pushing. And you? What do they think you're doing? Hunting you. Making sure you don't become a problem. He looked up from the phone. Antonio thinks I'm tracking you to eliminate the threat. The words should have scared her. Instead, they just made her tired. This was the world she'd married into, where husbands hunted wives, where family meant leverage, where love was always conditional on loyalty to the organization. I'm never coming back to this life, Adriana said. Even if we prove I'm innocent, even if Serena goes down. I'm done with the family, done with this world. Once this is over, I'm leaving, taking the baby and disappearing. Dominic's expression was unreadable. We can talk about that later. There's nothing to talk about. I'm telling you how it is. You're still my wife. Not for long. And after everything that's happened, did you really think we'd just go back to normal? Play house in the penthouse? Pretend none of this happened? I thought... He stopped, shook his head. I don't know what I thought. The silence stretched. Adriana turned away, looking out at the dark trees. When this is done, when Serena's exposed and the family knows the truth, I want a clean break. Divorce, settlement, full custody of the baby. I'll disappear, and you'll go back to being exactly what you are. No wife trying to change you. No complications. The baby's a Russo. The family won't let you just take, watch me. She spun back to face him. I will burn this entire organization to the ground before I let my child grow up in it. Before I let them turn an innocent person into what you all are. Dominic's eyes flashed. Careful. Or what? You'll add me to the list of people you've killed? Go ahead. At least then I won't have to watch my child become a monster. He was on his feet, closing the distance between them in 2 strides. For a second, Adriana thought he might actually hurt her. But he stopped just short, his face inches from hers, breathing hard. You don't know anything about what I am, he said, his voice low and dangerous. You spent 3 years in my world playing dress-up, thinking you understood. But you never did. You never understood what it takes to survive, to protect what's yours, to make the choices that keep you alive. I understand enough to know I don't want it for my child. Our child. And that baby's going to have Russo blood whether you like it or not. You can run, you can hide, but genetics don't lie. Eventually, they'll be exactly what you're so afraid of. Not if I raise them away from this. Not if I teach them there's another way. There is no other way. Not for people like us. Adriana shoved him hard. He barely moved. I'm not like you. I was never like you. That was the whole problem, remember? I wasn't hard enough, wasn't willing to embrace the violence and the blood and the casual cruelty. Serena was. And look how that worked out for you. The mention of Serena's name broke something in him. Dominic turned away, his shoulders tight. I made a mistake. You made 100 mistakes. The affair was just the first one. I know. Stop saying that. Stop saying you know like it means something. You don't know. You can't possibly understand what you put me through. Then tell me. He faced her again, and this time there was something raw in his expression. Tell me what it felt like. Make me understand. Adriana laughed, the sound breaking in her throat. It felt like dying. Every day, a little more. Watching you pull away, knowing something was wrong, but not knowing what. Then finding out, having it confirmed, and realizing I'd been competing with someone else for months without even knowing there was a competition. It felt like being erased while I was still standing there, watching it happen. Adriana, and then the framing, the evidence. Your family looking at me like I was nothing, like 3 years of loyalty meant nothing, because someone with better political connections said I was guilty. It felt like being buried alive, Dominic, screaming that I was innocent while everyone just shoveled more dirt on top of me. Tears were streaming down her face now, but she didn't care. And you helped. You stood there and let them do it. The man who promised to protect me, who swore I'd always be safe with him, just watched while they destroyed me. So no, you don't know. You can't possibly know. Dominic reached for her, but she stepped back. Don't touch me. Please. No. You don't get to comfort me. You don't get to fix this with a touch or an apology or whatever you think will make it better. You broke something that can't be repaired. His hand fell. For a long moment, they just stood there, the weight of everything they'd lost pressing down like physical force. Dominic's phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression shifting. Marco's ready. He's sending the full report now. They gathered around the laptop as the files came through, page after page of financial records, phone logs, surveillance footage. Marco had been thorough. Every connection between Serena and Viktor Sokolov, every transaction from the shell companies, every piece of evidence showing how the frame job had been constructed. This is it, Adriana breathed. This proves everything. Almost everything, Dominic corrected, scrolling through. We still don't have direct proof Serena ordered the attacks. The financial connection to Viktor is circumstantial. A good lawyer could argue she didn't know what he was using the money for. But combined with everything else, it's strong, but not airtight. We need her to confess. Or we need someone who can testify she gave the orders directly. Viktor. He's Volkov crew. He won't talk. Adriana thought fast, her mind racing. What if we make him talk? Set a trap? Get him to confirm Serena's involvement on tape. How? Use me as bait. Put it out that I've resurfaced, that I'm ready to testify to the family. Viktor will have to make a move, either try to kill me again or contact Serena for instructions. Either way, we get evidence. Absolutely not. It's the only way. It's suicide. You'd be exposed, vulnerable. If something goes wrong, then I die. But at least the truth dies with me on record. At least the baby, her voice caught. At least our child would know their mother wasn't a traitor. Dominic stared at her like she'd suggested jumping off a bridge. No, we'll find another way. There is no other way, and you know it. This is about timing. In 3 days, Antonio dissolves our marriage and Serena gets what she wants. We need to move now before she consolidates her position. I won't use you as bait. It's not your choice. This is my life, my reputation, my freedom. I'm willing to risk it. They argued for another hour, Dominic trying every angle to convince her it was too dangerous, Adriana refusing to back down. Finally, reluctantly, he agreed. But only with conditions. Multiple layers of security, backup plans, a location he controlled, and the understanding that if anything felt wrong, they'd abort. Marco arranged it, put out careful whispers that Adriana had contacted him, that she was ready to turn herself in but wanted guarantees. The bait was subtle, designed to reach the right ears without being obvious. Within 6 hours, Marco reported movement. Viktor Sokolov had made calls. activated resources. Someone was coming for Adriana. The trap was set for the following night in a warehouse the Russo family owned near the docks. Adriana would be visible, seemingly alone, while Dominic and a team watched from hidden positions. Cameras would record everything. The moment Victor or anyone else made a move, they'd have their evidence. "You stay in the kill zone for exactly 3 minutes," Dominic told her for the 5th time. "Any longer and we can't guarantee your safety." "I understand. And if shooting starts, you drop and stay down. Don't try to run, don't try to help, just survive." "I said I understand." He grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. "I can't lose you, not like this. Whatever else has happened between us, whatever we've become, I can't watch you die. Then make sure you're fast enough to stop it." The night arrived cold and damp, fog rolling off the water to wrap the warehouse district in gray. Adriana wore a wire under her jacket, the mic tiny but powerful. Dominic and his team were already in position by the time she arrived, hidden in the shadows, weapons ready. She walked into the warehouse alone, her footsteps echoing off concrete and metal. The space was vast and empty, lit by a few scattered work lights that created more shadows than illumination. Adriana positioned herself in the center, visible from multiple angles, and waited. 3 minutes felt like 3 hours. Every sound made her jump, water dripping, metal creaking, rats scurrying in the walls. Her hand kept drifting to her stomach, protective, before she forced it back down. Movement near the entrance. Adriana's heart hammered as 2 figures emerged from the fog. Not Victor Sokolov, Serena Morelli, and Vincent, her father. Adriana's mind raced, recalculating. This wasn't the plan. Serena wasn't supposed to come personally, wasn't supposed to expose herself, unless she was confident enough in her position that she didn't care about being seen. "Adriana?" Serena said, her voice carrying across the empty space. "I'm surprised you're still alive. Sorry to disappoint." "Are you?" Serena moved closer, elegant even in this setting, her coat probably worth more than the building. "You've been surprisingly resilient, I'll give you that. Most women in your position would have crumbled by now. Most women in my position didn't spend 3 years learning how to survive in a world that wants them dead." Vincent stayed near the entrance, his hand inside his coat where a gun almost certainly waited. Serena approached alone, confident, her heels clicking on concrete. "You called Marco," Serena said. "Said you wanted to confess. Very wise. Things will go easier if you cooperate." "Will they? Or will I just disappear quieter?" Serena smiled. "I like you, Adriana. I always have. In another life, we might have been friends. But you married the wrong man, and that made you a problem. So you decided to eliminate me." "I decided to eliminate the obstacle between me and what I wanted. Nothing personal." "Framing me for treason feels pretty personal." "It was efficient. You were already isolated, already doubting your place in Dominic's life. Making you into a traitor just accelerated the inevitable." Adriana's wire was catching every word, transmitting to Dominic's team and the recording devices. Keep her talking, she thought. Get her to say enough to bury herself. "The offshore accounts were clever," Adriana said. "The fake emails, the recording. You had help, though, Victor Sokolov, Volkov's tech specialist." Serena's smile widened. "You've been doing your homework." "Not hard to connect the dots once you start looking. Paolo set up the financial trail. Victor created the evidence. You orchestrated the whole thing. And did it beautifully, don't you think? Every piece of evidence pointing to you, no way to prove otherwise. By the time you figured out what was happening, it was too late." "The Russian attack, that was you too." "That was Victor panicking. He thought you might have found something to exonerate yourself. I told him to wait, that you were already finished, but he insisted on being thorough." Serena sighed. Contractors, so unreliable. She was confessing to everything, casual as discussing the weather. The arrogance was staggering. She genuinely believed she'd won, that nothing Adriana could do would change the outcome. "Dominic will figure it out eventually," Adriana said. "He's not stupid. Dominic sees what he wants to see. Right now, he wants to see a woman who accepts him completely, who doesn't try to change him. That's all I had to give him. Well, that and an alliance that makes him one of the most powerful men in the city. You're using him. Everyone uses everyone in this world. You used him for protection and legitimacy. I'm just honest about the transaction. Serena tilted her head. Though I will say the pregnancy was a nice touch, almost derailed everything. Lucky for me, accidents happen all the time. Adriana's blood ran cold. What? You didn't think I'd let you keep that baby, did you? A little fall, a miscarriage, tragic but not suspicious. Once the pregnancy's gone, you're just another traitor's wife. Disposable. Rage flooded through Adriana, hot and terrible. You're talking about killing my child. I'm talking about removing a complication. Nothing more. Adriana lunged before she could think better of it, hands reaching for Serena's throat. Vincent moved fast, pulling his gun, but Serena just laughed and stepped aside, letting Adriana stumble. There's the fire I was looking for. Good. I was starting to think you'd given up. Adriana regained her balance, breathing hard. Where was Dominic? The 3 minutes were up. He should have moved by now. Then she saw why he hadn't. More men emerging from the shadows. Not Russo crew. Morelli soldiers, armed, surrounding the warehouse. They'd walked into an ambush. Serena followed her gaze and smiled. Did you really think I wouldn't prepare for a trap? Please. I've been 10 steps ahead of you this entire time. The warehouse lights blazed on, sudden and blinding. When Adriana's eyes adjusted, she saw Dominic and his team surrounded, weapons trained on them from every angle. Marco was there too, hands zip-tied, blood running from a cut above his eye. Sorry, boss, Marco called out. They were waiting. Dominic's face was carved from ice, but his eyes, when they met Adriana's, were full of something that might have been fear. Serena walked to where Dominic stood, disarmed and furious. She touched his cheek almost tenderly. I tried to do this the easy way. Let Adriana disappear, have her declared a traitor, move forward with our life together. But she just wouldn't cooperate. So now we do it the hard way. You framed her, Dominic said, his voice deadly quiet. Everything she said was true. Of course it was. Did you really think someone like her could orchestrate betrayal? She's too soft, too moral. I knew you'd never believe it completely. That's why I had to move fast. Get you committed before doubt set in too deep. I'll kill you for this. No, you won't, because in about 2 minutes, Vincent's men are going to make it look like the Volkovs attacked again. Adriana dies, sadly, along with several of your men. You escape, traumatized, grateful to me for warning you about the trap, and our engagement goes ahead as planned. Adriana's mind raced. They had the confession on tape, but if they died here, the evidence died with them. Dominic knows the truth now. You can't manipulate him anymore. Can't I? Watch. Serena turned to Dominic. Here's your choice, darling. Either Adriana dies tonight and you get everything we planned, Brooklyn, power, a wife who won't try to change you, or you try to save her and watch your entire family get destroyed. Because if you choose her, I release everything to the FBI. Real evidence this time. Names, dates, transactions. Your uncle goes to prison. Marco dies here. Your whole organization collapses. You're bluffing. Try me. The moment stretched thin and terrible. Adriana watched Dominic's face, saw the calculation happening behind his eyes. Family or her. Empire or love. The choice he'd already made once before, when he'd chosen Serena's lies over Adriana's truth. Vincent raised his gun, pointing it at Adriana's head. 10 seconds, Dominic. Then I shoot her anyway, and you live with knowing you could have saved the family but hesitated. 9. 8. Adriana closed her eyes. Thought about the baby, about the life they'd never have, about dying with everyone still thinking she was a traitor. 7. 6. Stop! Dominic's voice cut through the countdown. You win. Do whatever you want. Just don't hurt her. Serena's smile was triumphant. That's my darling, always making the smart choice. Not this time. The voice came from the entrance. Antonio Russo stood there with 20 armed men, all weapons trained on the Morellis. Behind him, more family members. Carlo, the Castellano brothers, others Adriana recognized from family dinners. Antonio's face was carved from granite. Put the guns down. All of you. Vincent didn't lower his weapon. This is Morelli business. Walk away, Antonio. When you threaten a woman carrying Russo blood in a Russo warehouse, it becomes my business. Gun down, now. The standoff held for 3 eternal seconds. Then Vincent lowered his weapon. His men followed suit, outgunned and outmaneuvered. Antonio walked into the center of the warehouse, his eyes moving from Serena to Dominic to Adriana. "Someone want to tell me what's happening here?" "We have her confession," Dominic said. "Everything, the framing, the fake evidence, working with Viktor Sokolov. It's all on tape." "Tape can be faked," Serena said smoothly. "Not this one. We've been transmitting to 3 separate locations: family security, Leonard Castellano's office, and an independent third party. All time-stamped, all verified." Dominic's voice was ice. "You just confessed to treason, attempted murder, and conspiracy, in front of witnesses, with evidence." Serena's composure finally cracked. "You can't prove. We can prove all of it. Marco spent 2 days building the case. Financial records, communication logs, surveillance footage. And now we have you, on tape, admitting you did it." The silence that followed was absolute. Serena looked at her father, who looked at Antonio, who looked disappointed but not surprised. "The Morelli family has a lot to answer for," Antonio said quietly. "Starting with you, Vincent. You knew what your daughter was doing." "I know nothing." "Liar." The word cracked like a whip. "You've been positioning for a takeover for years. This was just your latest attempt. Sloppy, though. Using an outsider like Viktor Sokolov. The Volkovs won't be happy to learn their man was working private contracts." Vincent's face went gray. In this world, involving a rival organization in internal business was worse than the betrayal itself. "Take them," Antonio ordered. Morelli soldiers were disarmed and zip-tied. Serena fought, screaming obscenities, her perfect composure completely shattered. Vincent went quietly, already calculating his next move, but there wouldn't be one. Not after this. Dominic crossed to Adriana, his hands hovering like he wanted to touch her, but didn't dare. "Are you okay?" "No." She was shaking, adrenaline crashing. "But I'm alive. I'm sorry for everything, for not believing you, for not now." She couldn't process apologies with guns still out and bodies still tense. "Later, maybe." Antonio approached them. "Mrs. Russo, you have my apology. The family's apology. We wronged you, and we will make amends." "I don't want amends. I want out." The old man's eyebrows rose. "Out?" "Of this life, this family. All of it. I want a divorce, a settlement, and full custody of my child. Then I disappear, and you all forget I existed." "That's not—" "It's happening," Adriana said, surprised by the strength in her own voice. "I proved my innocence. I did what you asked. Now I get to walk away." Antonio looked at Dominic. "This is acceptable to you?" Dominic's jaw was tight, but he nodded. "If it's what she wants, then we'll make the arrangements." Antonio turned to his men. "Take the Morellis to the holding facility. We'll deal with them properly." He looked back at Adriana. "You'll have your freedom, Mrs. Russo. You've earned it." The warehouse emptied slowly. Morellis hauled away, Russo soldiers securing the area, Marco getting his hands untied and his head checked. Vita appeared from somewhere, wrapping a blanket around Adriana's shoulders. "You did good, Kara," she said quietly. "Most wouldn't have survived what you went through." "I'm not sure I did survive. Not all of me. The important parts did. That's what matters." Dominic stayed close but didn't touch her, didn't push. When everyone else had gone and it was just the two of them in the empty warehouse, he finally spoke. "I know you want out. I understand why. But before you go, I need you to know I loved you, love you. That wasn't a lie, even when everything else was broken." Adriana looked at him, this man she'd married, who'd destroyed her and saved her in equal measure. "I know, but love wasn't enough, was it? Love didn't protect me, didn't make you believe in me when it mattered." "No," he admitted. "It didn't. So I'm leaving, and you're letting me go. That's how we survive this." He nodded once, final, and turned away. Adriana watched him walk out into the fog, his shoulders carrying the weight of everything they'd lost. Then she pressed her hand to her stomach, where her baby grew, and promised herself that she'd never let anyone make her doubt herself like that again. She'd survived, but the cost had been everything she thought she'd built, and now she'd start over, completely alone. The safe house felt different now, less like protection and more like a cage counting down to freedom. Adriana spent the next 3 days there while Leonard Castellano hammered out the divorce settlement, each hour stretching longer than the last. Dominic came and went, bringing food, medical supplies, updates on what was happening with the Morellis, but they barely spoke. The silence between them had weight now, heavy with everything they'd never be able to fix. On the morning of the 4th day, Leonard arrived with papers. He spread them across the kitchen table, his expression professionally neutral, though Adriana caught something like sympathy in his eyes. "It's generous," he said. More than generous, actually. Dominic didn't negotiate, just signed whatever I put in front of him. Adriana scanned the documents. $5 million in liquid assets, transferred immediately. A brownstone in Boston, fully paid, under a trust that couldn't be touched by the family. Monthly support until the child turned 18. Full custody, no visitation rights unless Adriana explicitly allowed it. Her maiden name restored. All ties to the Russo family legally severed. "He's buying his guilt," she said. "Maybe. Or he's making sure you and the baby are protected." Leonard pulled out a pen. "Either way, you should take it. Women in your position usually get far less. Women in my position usually end up dead." "Yes, they do." He pushed the pen toward her. "Sign it, Adriana. Take the money, take the freedom, and don't look back." She signed. Her hand was steady, her signature firm. With each page, she felt the marriage dissolve, not just legally, but in some deeper way. 3 years erased with ink and witnesses. When the last signature dried, Leonard gathered the papers. "You're free. Legally, financially, completely. The family has no claim on you or the child. Dominic made sure of that." "Where is he?" "Dealing with the Morelli situation. It's gotten complicated." "How complicated?" Leonard hesitated, then seemed to decide she deserved to know. "Vincent Morelli is dead, executed by family vote 3 days ago. Serena's in a psychiatric facility upstate, the family's way of showing mercy to a woman who's clearly unstable. Paolo, the cousin who helped with the technical work, is missing. Probably dead too, though no one's claiming credit." Adriana absorbed this. She should have felt satisfaction, justice served, enemies punished. Instead, she just felt tired, empty. "What about Viktor Sokolov? The Volkov connection?" "That's where it gets interesting. Turns out Viktor was playing both sides, working for Serena but also feeding information to his own organization. The Volkovs didn't know about the framing, but they knew about the affair and were planning to use it for leverage. When everything came out, they eliminated Viktor themselves. Didn't appreciate being used without permission. So everyone's dead or destroyed. Except you." Leonard's smile was small. "You survived, which in this world is the same as winning." A car arrived that afternoon to take her to Boston. Adriana packed the few things she had, clothes Vita had provided, toiletries, the ultrasound photo she kept folded in her wallet. Her old life fit in a single duffel bag. Dominic was waiting outside. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, dark circles under his eyes. His suit rumpled in a way he normally never allowed. When Adriana appeared with her bag, something crossed his face, pain, maybe, or regret that ran deeper than words could reach. "You don't have to do this," he said. "Yes, I do. The baby needs a father. The baby needs a mother who's alive and sane. You can't give me that if I stay." He stepped closer, and for the first time in weeks, Adriana let him. "I could change, do better. We could try again, make it work." "We already tried. It ended with you sleeping with someone else and me standing in front of your family being accused of treason. That's not fair." "None of this is fair, Dominic, but it's over. You need to accept that." His hand came up, hovering near her face like he wanted to touch her, but knew he'd lost that right. "I love you. I know I destroyed it. No, I don't deserve another chance. But I need you to know. I love you. I always did." "I know." And she did. That was the tragedy of it all. The love had been real on both sides, and it still hadn't been enough. But love isn't the same as trust, and I can't trust you, not after everything. "Will you let me see the baby when they're born?" Adriana considered. "Maybe. If you prove you've changed, If you get out of this life, go legitimate like I always wanted. Otherwise, no, I won't let my child anywhere near this world. That's not, it's the deal. Take it or walk away. Dominic's jaw worked. They both knew he couldn't do it, couldn't leave the family, couldn't become something other than what he was. The life was in his blood, had been since birth. Asking him to leave it was like asking him to stop breathing. I'll try, he said finally. Don't lie to me, not now. I'll try, he repeated, and this time it sounded more like truth. I don't know if I can do it, but I'll try. For you, for the baby. Adriana picked up her bag. Goodbye, Dominic. He caught her wrist, gentle but desperate. Wait, just give me one more minute. We don't have any more minutes. We used them all up. Please. She stopped, looked at him, really looked at him. Saw the man she'd fallen in love with still there under the damage, under the choices that had destroyed them. Saw him clearly, maybe for the first time since the beginning. I forgive you, she said quietly. Not because you deserve it, because I need to let go of the anger or it'll eat me alive. So I forgive you for the affair, for not believing me, for all of it. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It just means I'm not carrying your mistakes anymore. Dominic's eyes were wet. Adriana had never seen him cry, not once in 3 years. I'm sorry. For everything. I'm so sorry. I know. She pulled her wrist free. Take care of yourself. Then she got in the car and didn't look back. Boston was cold and gray when she arrived, the brownstone tucked into a quiet street in Beacon Hill. It was beautiful in an understated way. Brick facade, black shutters, a small garden that would bloom in spring. Nothing like the Manhattan penthouse with its floor-to-ceiling windows and view of the city. This was quieter, gentler, designed for a different kind of life. Adriana walked through empty rooms, her footsteps echoing. She'd have to furnish it, make it feel like home instead of just a structure. The thought was daunting and liberating in equal measure. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. If you need anything, call. V. Vita. Checking in, making sure Adriana knew she wasn't completely alone. It was more kindness than she'd expected from that world. Adriana deleted the number. Clean breaks worked better that way. The pregnancy progressed. Morning sickness gave way to exhaustion, gave way to the strange floating feeling of the second trimester. Adriana found an obstetrician who asked no questions about the absent father, attended prenatal classes with other women who had partners and support systems and normal lives. She smiled and lied when they asked about her situation, creating a fiction of a husband who traveled for work, who'd be back for the birth. The brownstone slowly filled with furniture from estate sales and thrift shops. Adriana avoided anything new or expensive, wanting to build this life from pieces that had belonged to other people, other stories. A couch that had seen other families, a dining table scarred with years of use, lamps that had illuminated other homes. She got a job at a community health clinic, her nursing license still valid under her maiden name. The work was simple, taking vitals, giving vaccines, filling prescriptions, but it felt honest in a way nothing in her old life had. These people needed help, and she could give it. No politics, no power plays, just medicine. Her coworkers were kind but distant, respecting the boundaries she kept around her past. She told them she was divorced, nothing more. They didn't push. At night, alone in the brownstone, Adriana sometimes wondered what Dominic was doing. If he was trying to go legitimate like he'd promised, or if he'd slipped back into the life the moment she was gone. She checked news sites occasionally, looking for mentions of the Russo family, but found nothing. Either they'd gone quiet or they'd gotten better at hiding. She told herself she didn't care, told herself the not knowing was better than knowing. Mostly, she believed it. The baby kicked for the first time at 20 weeks. Adriana was standing in the kitchen making tea when it happened, a flutter, then a solid thump against her palm. She froze, tears springing to her eyes. Real. The baby was real, alive, growing. She sat down at the table and cried for 20 minutes, overwhelmed by the weight of what was coming. In 4 months, she'd be a mother, solely responsible for another human being. No husband, no family, no support system beyond what she could build herself. The fear was paralyzing. But underneath it, something else stirred. Determination, fierce and unbreakable. She'd survived everything the Russo family had thrown at her. She could survive raising a child alone. Her sister Angela called that night, the first time they'd spoken in months. "I heard you left New York," Angela said carefully. "Divorced Dominic. News travels. Are you okay? The baby—" "We're fine, both of us." Adriana kept her voice steady. "How did you hear?" "Vita called me. Said you might need family around and she couldn't exactly visit without causing problems." Vita again, watching out for her from a distance. Adriana made a mental note to send a thank you card. Or maybe not. Contact could be dangerous, could draw attention she didn't want. "I'm managing," Adriana said. "Really? You don't need to worry." "You're my sister. Of course I worry." Angela paused. "Can I come visit? Meet my niece or nephew when they're born? I'd like that." They talked for an hour, catching up, carefully avoiding the details of what had actually happened with Dominic and the family. Angela knew better than to ask directly. She'd been nervous about Adriana marrying into that world from the start, had warned her that love couldn't fix dangerous men. She'd been right, but saying so now would just hurt. After they hung up, Adriana felt less alone. One connection, one person who knew her real name and history and still cared. It was enough. Winter turned to spring. The brownstone's garden bloomed, crocuses first, then daffodils, tulips filling the small plot with color. Adriana tended them carefully, learning as she went, grateful for something living that responded to care without complication. The baby grew. By 30 weeks, Adriana's body felt foreign, swollen feet, aching back, skin stretched tight over the life inside her. She waddled more than walked, couldn't sleep more than a few hours without needing to pee, lived in comfortable clothes that accommodated her expanding shape. She was in the 3rd trimester when the letter arrived. No return address. Just her name in handwriting she recognized instantly. Dominic's. Adriana stared at it for 10 minutes before opening it, her heart doing complicated things in her chest. Inside, a single page. "Adriana, I'm writing this from a hotel room in Prague. I've been traveling for the past 3 months, putting distance between myself and the family while I figure out who I am without them. It's harder than I thought. Turns out, when you've been one thing your entire life, becoming something else feels like dying. I've started the process of separating from the organization, handed over my territories, my responsibilities, everything. Antonio thinks I'm having a breakdown. Marco thinks I'm running from guilt. Maybe they're both right. I don't know if I can actually do this, go legitimate, become the man you wanted me to be. But I'm trying. For what it's worth, I'm trying. I think about you every day, about the baby. Wonder if they've been born yet, if they're healthy, if they look like you or me or some combination neither of us expects. I wonder if you hate me or if you've moved past that into indifference, which would somehow be worse. You said I could see the baby if I changed. I'm changing, or at least I'm trying to. When they're born, if you're willing, I'd like to meet them, just once, just to see what we made together before everything fell apart. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know that, but I'm asking for a chance anyway. D. Adriana read the letter 3 times, then set it carefully on the kitchen table. She didn't know what to do with it, how to feel. Part of her wanted to believe he was really trying, really becoming something different. Part of her knew that people like Dominic didn't change. They just found new ways to be what they'd always been. She put the letter in a drawer and tried not to think about it. At 35 weeks, Adriana's water broke during her shift at the clinic. One moment she was taking a patient's blood pressure, the next she was standing in a puddle, feeling the first contractions start deep in her back. Her coworker drove her to the hospital, stayed with her through the first hours of labor, while Adriana tried to breathe through pain that felt like her body was tearing itself apart. Angela arrived 6 hours in, breathless and worried, and took over the hand-holding duties. "You're doing great," Angela kept saying, which was a lie, but Adriana appreciated it anyway. 17 hours of labor. The baby was sunny side up, facing the wrong way, taking their time. The pain became everything. Not just physical, but existential, like her entire being was contracting down to this single purpose. Push, breathe, push again. The world narrowed to the delivery room and the voice of her doctor giving instructions. Then, finally, crying, high and angry and alive. "It's a girl," the doctor announced. They placed the baby on Adriana's chest, tiny and wrinkled, and covered in vernix. She had a surprising amount of dark hair, and her father's sharp features even at minutes old. Adriana touched her daughter's face with shaking fingers, overwhelmed by the rush of love that hit harder than any drug. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi, baby girl. I'm your mama." The baby's eyes opened, unfocused, searching, finding Adriana's face and fixing on it. Some instinct firing, recognizing the voice she'd been hearing for months. Adriana named her Sophia. It meant wisdom, and though the baby was too young to be wise, Adriana hoped she'd grow into it. Hoped she'd be smart enough to avoid the mistakes her mother had made. The hospital room filled with flowers over the next 2 days, from her co-workers, from Angela, from the clinic. One arrangement stood out, massive and expensive, with a card that read simply, "Congratulations, be well." No flowers from Dominic. He didn't know Sophia had been born, didn't have this address or any way to contact her. Adriana told herself she was relieved. She lied to herself better than she'd expected. They went home 3 days later. Angela helped set up the nursery, showed Adriana how to swaddle properly, stayed for 2 weeks before she had to return to her own life. Then it was just the two of them, Adriana and Sophia, learning each other in the quiet brownstone. The first weeks were brutal. Sophia cried constantly, slept in erratic bursts, needed to eat every 2 hours. Adriana stumbled through in a fog of exhaustion, her body still healing from the birth, her mind barely functioning. She'd known newborns were hard, but knowing and experiencing were different countries. But there were moments. Sophia's tiny hand wrapped around Adriana's finger. The way she'd quiet when Adriana sang, even though Adriana couldn't carry a tune. The smell of her head, sweet and milky. The way she'd stare up at Adriana during feedings, her dark eyes serious and intent. In those moments, Adriana felt purpose settle into her bones. This was why she'd survived. This little person, innocent and perfect, who would never know the violence that had shaped her parents. Sophia was 6 weeks old when the second letter arrived. Adriana, I heard about the baby. A girl. I won't ask how I found out. Let's just say some connections are impossible to completely sever. Her name is Sophia. It's beautiful. I'm back in the States. Not in New York. I can't go back there. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I've bought a house in Oregon, of all places. Small town, quiet, the kind of place where people mind their own business. I'm trying to build something legitimate. A security consulting firm using skills I learned in the family, but applied legally. It's slow going. Turns out when your only references are criminals, finding legitimate clients is hard. I know I said I wanted to meet her. I still do. But I also know I have no right to ask. You made a clean break, built a new life. Me showing up would complicate that. So I'm leaving the choice to you. If you want me to stay away, I will. I'll respect your boundaries, won't contact you again. Sophia will grow up without knowing me, and that's probably for the best. But if you're willing to let me be part of her life, even just the edges, even just occasional visits, I'd like that. I want to try to be a father. A real one, not the kind my father was to me. I'm different now, or at least I'm trying to be. Whether that's enough is up to you. The return address is real. If you write back, I'll get it. If you don't, I'll understand. D. Adriana read the letter while Sophia slept in her bassinet, the baby's chest rising and falling in the steady rhythm that Adriana had learned to monitor obsessively. She looked at her daughter, Dominic's daughter too, whether he was present or not, and tried to imagine what was fair. Sophia deserved to know her father. Even if he was flawed, even if he'd made terrible choices, he was still half of where she came from. Denying her that connection felt cruel, but letting Dominic in also felt dangerous. Not physically. She believed he'd never hurt Sophia, but emotionally. What if he tried to pull them back into his world? What if his idea of going legitimate was just a prettier version of the same violence? She sat with the question for 3 days. On the third day, she wrote back, Dominic, Sophia is healthy, beautiful, exhausting, everything I didn't know I needed. I don't trust you. I need to be clear about that up front. You destroyed that trust. And it doesn't just grow back because you write nice letters and move to Oregon. But Sophia deserves the chance to know you. Not the version of you that ran the Russo territories and made people disappear. The version you're claiming to become. So here's the deal. You can visit once a month in Boston, in public places, coffee shops, parks, the aquarium, somewhere neutral with witnesses. You come alone, no family connections, no bringing your old life anywhere near her. You prove you've actually changed, that you're building something legitimate, and we'll see where it goes from there. If you break these rules, if you bring any danger near my daughter, you'll never see her again. I mean that. First visit can be next month. Let me know when you can make it. She sent the letter before she could second-guess herself. Dominic showed up 4 weeks later on a Saturday morning, looking nothing like the man she'd married. He'd lost weight, his suit replaced with jeans and a sweater, his hair longer and unstyled. He looked tired and uncertain, and more human than she'd ever seen him. They met at a park near the brownstone. Adriana pushed Sophia's stroller to a bench, and Dominic sat down carefully, keeping distance between them. "Thank you for this," he said. "Don't thank me yet. You haven't met her." Adriana lifted Sophia out of the stroller. At 3 months, the baby had filled out, her features settling into something recognizable. She had Dominic's eyes, Adriana's mouth, a serious expression that made her look older than her months. "This is Sophia," Adriana said, and placed the baby in Dominic's arms. He held her like she was made of glass, his hands careful, his expression completely transformed. All the hardness Adriana associated with him melted away, leaving something raw and wondering. "She's perfect," he whispered. "She's 3 months old, she cries and poops and doesn't sleep. Perfect is a stretch." But Dominic wasn't listening. He was staring at Sophia, who stared back with her serious dark eyes, the two of them taking measure of each other. Then Sophia smiled, one of her first real smiles, and Dominic's whole face changed. "She smiled at me." Gas, probably. "No, that was real." He looked up at Adriana. "She smiled at me." They sat on the bench for an hour. Dominic held Sophia the entire time, talking to her in a soft voice Adriana had never heard him use, making faces that got more smiles. When Sophia started to fuss, he handed her back reluctantly. "Can I come back?" he asked. "Next month?" "Same rules. Public places, alone. Prove you're legitimate." "I will." He pulled out his phone, showed her photos of a small office building. "My company. Security consulting for tech firms. Nothing illegal, nothing connected to the family. I've got 3 employees and 6 clients. It's small, but it's real." Adriana studied the photos. It could have been fake, staged for her benefit. But something in Dominic's eyes suggested it wasn't. He looked proud in a different way than when he'd run territories. Quieter, less arrogant, more earned. "Okay," she said. "Same time next month." He left, and Adriana sat on the bench with Sophia in her arms, feeling the weight of the choice she'd just made. Letting Dominic into their lives, even at the edges, even with rules and boundaries, was a risk. But watching Sophia smile at her father, seeing the wonder in his eyes, made Adriana think maybe some risks were worth taking. The visits continued. Once a month, always public, always carefully controlled. Dominic showed up every time, never late, never pushing boundaries. He brought photos of his business growing, documents proving he'd completely separated from the Russo family, articles about the legitimate work his company was doing. Sophia grew. Sitting up, then crawling, then her first shaky steps. Dominic was there for some of it, present in the way he could be with the constraints Adriana had set. He was patient with the limitations, never asked for more than she offered. But Adriana could see it cost him. The way he'd linger at the end of visits, reluctant to leave. The hunger in his eyes when he held Sophia, like he was trying to memorize her before time ran out. The careful way he'd ask about their lives, wanting to know everything but knowing he'd missed so much he couldn't be told. When Sophia was 8 months old, Dominic asked if he could take her to the zoo. Just them, no Adriana hovering. "No," Adriana said immediately. "I understand boundaries, but I'm her father. I need to be able to spend time with her without supervision eventually." "Eventually isn't now." "When will it be now? I've done everything you asked. Proved I've changed, built a legitimate business, showed up every month for 8 months. What else do I need to do to earn your trust?" "I don't know if you can earn it back." The words came out harsher than she'd intended. "You destroyed it, Dominic, completely. And I'm really trying to let you be part of Sophia's life. But trusting you alone with her? That's different. I would never hurt her. I know. But you might bring your old life near her without meaning to. One wrong connection, one person recognizing you, and suddenly we're all at risk. Dominic's frustration was visible, but he controlled it. Fine, you come too. All three of us go to the zoo. But let me have time with her. Let me be her father, not just a stranger who visits once a month. Adriana considered. Okay, this weekend. We'll try. The zoo trip was strange and almost normal at the same time. They moved through exhibits like a regular family. Two parents, a baby, discussing which animals Sophia seemed most interested in. The baby loved the penguins, laughed at the sea lions, fell asleep during the reptile house. Dominic pushed the stroller, and Adriana walked beside him, and for stretches of time she forgot why they weren't together anymore. Forgot the affair and the framing and the night she'd nearly died. Just existed in the moment, watching her daughter experience the world with a father who clearly adored her. Then Sophia would look at Dominic and smile, or he'd laugh at something she did, and Adriana would remember. The loss crashed over her fresh, not just of the marriage, but of what they could have been if he'd made different choices. You're sad, Dominic said quietly while Sophia napped in her stroller. Just thinking. About us? About what we could have been. If you hadn't... She stopped. It doesn't matter now. It matters to me. Dominic stopped walking, turned to face her. I know I can't undo what I did. No, I destroyed something irreplaceable. But Adriana, I'm not the same man who hurt you. I've spent every day since you left trying to become someone better. Someone worthy of being Sophia's father, of being in your life again, even just at the edges. Why? The question burst out before she could stop it. Why go through all this? You could have just stayed in your world, had other children with someone else, moved on. Because I don't want other children with someone else. I want Sophia, and I want... He hesitated. I want you. Still. Always. Even though I know that ship has sailed, even though I destroyed any chance we had, the wanting doesn't stop just because I don't deserve it anymore. Adriana's chest ached. Part of her wanted to believe him, wanted to think they could rebuild what they'd lost. But the scar tissue was too thick, the damage too deep. I can't go back to you, she said. Too much has happened. Too much trust got broken. But maybe we can move forward. Not as a couple, but as Sophia's parents, as people who care about each other because of her. Is that enough? It has to be. They stood there in the spring sunshine with their sleeping daughter between them, mourning the relationship that had died and trying to figure out how to build something new from the ashes. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't a happy ending. But it was real. And maybe that was better. Sophia's first birthday came with a small party. Angela, a few friends from the clinic, Dominic invited, but sitting slightly apart, not quite integrated into Adriana's new life, but present. Sophia demolished a cupcake, got frosting everywhere, laughed with pure joy at the chaos she'd created. Adriana watched Dominic watching their daughter, saw the love and regret and determination in his face. He'd kept his promises for a full year, stayed legitimate, built his business, showed up for Sophia even when it cost him. Maybe, eventually, she could trust him again. Not with her heart, that would stay locked away, protected from the kind of damage he'd inflicted. But with their daughter, with co-parenting, with the careful friendship they were building. It wasn't the life she'd imagined when she'd married him. But she was alive, Sophia was thriving, and they were both free of the violence that had nearly consumed them. That was enough. That had to be enough. Sophia turned 3 on a cold October morning, and Adriana woke to find her daughter already standing by the window, nose pressed to the glass, watching the first snow of the season fall. "Mama, look! White stuff!" "Snow, baby. It's called snow." "Can we go outside?" "After breakfast, and after Daddy gets here." The word still felt strange in Adriana's mouth. Daddy. But Sophia used it naturally now, had for over a year. Dominic had earned the title through consistency, showing up every other weekend now, instead of monthly, taking Sophia for full days that no longer required Adriana's supervision. The trust had been built slowly, brick by painful brick, but it existed now in a way it hadn't before. Dominic arrived at 9 with presents and that careful smile he wore around Adriana.
The one that said he knew his place and wouldn't push for more.
He'd aged well in the 3 years since the divorce, lines around his eyes that suggested he actually slept now,
A softness in his face that the old version of him would have considered weakness. "Birthday girl!" He scooped Sophia up, and she shrieked with delight. 3 years old, that's basically ancient. "I'm not ancient, you're ancient." Ouch. That hurts, kid. Adriana watched them from the kitchen doorway, feeling the complicated mix of emotions she'd never quite learned to untangle.
love for what they'd created together, grief for what they'd destroyed, gratitude that he'd actually become the father Sophia deserved, and underneath it all, a small, persistent ache that she'd learned to live with but never fully shake. They spent the morning at the park despite the snow, Sophia bundled in so many layers she could barely move. Dominic pushed her on the swings while Adriana took photos, documenting this ordinary moment that felt precious exactly because it was ordinary. No danger, no drama, just a father and daughter playing while snow fell around them. Later, back at the brownstone, they did cake and presents. Sophia opened each gift with the careful concentration of a child who'd been taught to appreciate things, who didn't take abundance for granted because Adriana had made sure of that. A art set from Adriana, a giant stuffed elephant from Angela, and from Dominic, a necklace, child-sized, delicate, with a small pendant in the shape of a heart. "It's pretty," Sophia breathed, touching it with careful fingers. "It was your grandmother's," Dominic said quietly. "My mother's. She would have loved you." Adriana's chest tightened. She knew Dominic's mother had died when he was young, knew the necklace was probably one of the few things he had from her. Giving it to Sophia meant something, a connection to his past that wasn't violent, a piece of family history that was actually worth keeping. "Are you sure?" Adriana asked. "Yeah, I want her to have something from that side of the family, something that's not—" He stopped, glanced at Sophia, who was admiring the necklace in the mirror. "Something good." After Sophia went down for her nap, Adriana and Dominic sat in the kitchen with coffee, the comfortable silence of people who'd learned to exist in each other's space without friction. "I got a call last week," Dominic said. "From Marco." Adriana's hand tightened on her mug. She hadn't heard that name in 3 years, had carefully avoided all news from that world. "What did he want?" "To tell me Antonio died. Heart attack. Quick, at least." The news should have hit harder. Antonio had been part of her life for 3 years, had judged her and nearly condemned her and ultimately let her go. But mostly she just felt distant, like hearing about a stranger's death. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I don't know. He was family, but I left that world. Chose to leave. I don't know if I'm allowed to mourn it." "You can mourn what it meant to you without mourning what it was." Dominic looked at her, something complicated in his eyes. "You always did that. Made sense of things I couldn't. Someone had to." Marco also said, he hesitated. He said the family's falling apart. Without Antonio holding it together, everyone's grabbing for power. It's going to be a war, probably already is. That's not our problem anymore. I know, but it made me think about what we left behind, about Sophia, and what happens if that world comes looking for her. Adriana's blood went cold. "Why would they? You've been out for 3 years, no contact, no involvement. They have no claim on her. She's still a Russo. If the family's desperate enough, if they need legitimacy or leverage, they might remember she exists." "Over my dead body. That's what I'm afraid of." Dominic leaned forward, his voice urgent. "I think we should leave, all of us. Go somewhere they can't find us. New names, new city, completely off the grid. I have a life here, a job, friends, Angela visits. And Sophia has a target on her back if the wrong people start asking questions." Adriana wanted to argue, wanted to say he was being paranoid, but she'd lived in that world long enough to know paranoia was just pattern recognition. If the family was fracturing, if people were desperate, a child with Russo blood could be valuable, either as an heir to rebuild legitimacy around or as leverage against Dominic. "What are you suggesting?" she asked. "I have contacts. People who help people disappear for real, new identities, clean backgrounds, the kind of thing that even federal databases won't flag. We could be a family somewhere else, different names, different story." "We're not a family, Dominic. We're Sophia's parents. That's a kind of family. You know what I mean." He sat back, something defeated in his posture. "Yeah, I know. They sat in silence. Outside, snow continued to fall. Upstairs, Sophia slept, innocent and unaware of the conversation happening below her. If we do this, Adriana said slowly, it's for Sophia, not for us. We don't suddenly become a couple again just because we're hiding together. I understand. And I pick where we go. Somewhere I feel safe, not somewhere you think is tactical. Okay? And you really prove, that the family can't find us. Because if I uproot our entire life and it turns out you were wrong, I'll never forgive you. I'll prove it. Dominic pulled out his phone, showed her documents she didn't fully understand but looked official. I've been working on this for 6 months, since Marco first told me things were getting unstable. 3 identities, you, me, Sophia, complete backgrounds, employment history, everything. We'd be a normal family who moved for a job opportunity. Where? Wherever you want. I was thinking Pacific Northwest, Seattle maybe, or Portland. Big enough to disappear in, liberal enough that people mind their own business. Adriana thought about the brownstone, her job at the clinic, the careful life she'd built from nothing. The idea of abandoning it made her want to cry. But the idea of Sophia being used as a pawn in someone else's power play made her want to burn the world down. I need to think about it, she said. Don't think too long. If they're coming, they won't wait for us to be ready. The decision consumed her for the next week. Adriana lay awake at night, weighing options that all felt wrong. Stay and risk Sophia's safety. Run and lose everything she'd worked for. Trust Dominic's judgment after he'd proven so spectacularly bad at judgment before. She called Angela, spoke in hypotheticals about relocating for work. You just got settled, Angela pointed out. Sophia's happy, you're happy. Why would you leave? Safety, better opportunities, change of scenery. Bullshit. What's really going on? Adriana couldn't explain without revealing everything about the Russo family, about the danger that might be circling. So she lied. Just thinking about options, keeping doors open. You're running from something. Maybe. Does it have to do with Dominic? Everything has to do with Dominic, Angela sighed. If you need to go, go. I'll support you, but make sure you're running towards something, not just away. The advice stuck. Running away had never solved anything, but running towards safety, toward a future where Sophia could grow up without looking over her shoulder, that was different. Adriana called Dominic. Okay, we'll do it. But Seattle, not Portland, and we don't live together. Separate apartments, co-parenting arrangement like we have now. Whatever you need. And if this goes wrong, if the family finds us, or if you're lying about being out, I'm not lying. If you are, I take Sophia and you never see her again. That's the deal. Deal. They moved in November, right after Thanksgiving. The new identities were surprisingly thorough. Adriana became Elena Marlowe, divorced single mother, nurse practitioner. Dominic became Daniel Mercer, security consultant. Sophia's involved but non-custodial father. Sophia got to keep her first name but lost Russo, became Sophia Marlowe instead. Seattle was gray and wet and so different from Boston that Adriana felt unmoored the first few weeks. She found work at a hospital, enrolled Sophia in a good preschool, rented an apartment in Capitol Hill that got decent light despite the constant clouds. Dominic, Daniel now, took a place in Fremont, close enough for regular visits but far enough to maintain boundaries. Sophia adjusted faster than Adriana expected. She made friends at preschool, loved the rain, asked constantly when they could go see the Space Needle. The resilience of children, Adriana thought. They adapted to anything as long as they felt loved. Months passed. No sign of the Russo family, no mysterious men asking questions, no feeling of being watched. Adriana started to relax, started to believe maybe Dominic had actually done it, severed the connection completely, made them invisible. She and Dominic developed a rhythm. He'd pick Sophia up from preschool twice a week, have her for dinner, bring her back before bedtime. Weekends rotated. He'd take her Saturday, Adriana would have her Sunday, or vice versa. They communicated primarily through text, efficient and polite, 2 people managing a shared responsibility. Sometimes, though, there were moments. Sophia would say something that made them both laugh, and their eyes would meet, and Adriana would remember what it felt like to be married to him, before everything went wrong. Before Serena and the betrayal, and the night she'd almost died. The memories didn't hurt as much anymore. Time had done its work, scabbing over the worst of the damage. but they were still there, waiting in quiet moments. One Saturday in May, Sophia was with Dominic and Adriana found herself alone with nothing to do. She walked to a coffee shop, brought a book, tried to enjoy the solitude she'd once craved, but the brownstone felt too quiet, too empty without Sophia's constant chatter. Her phone rang, Dominic's number. "What's wrong?" Panic spiked immediately. "Is Sophia She's fine. She's right here. We're at the aquarium. But Adriana, you need to come. Now." "Why? What happened?" "Just come. I'll explain when you get here." She ran, literally ran, catching a rideshare that took 20 minutes that felt like hours. The aquarium was crowded with weekend tourists, families with strollers and kids pressing faces to glass. Adriana found Dominic near the jellyfish exhibit, Sophia holding his hand, looking confused but not scared. "What's going on?" Adriana demanded. "Over there, by the octopus tank. Don't look directly." Adriana glanced casually in that direction and felt her heart stop. Marco Russo stood there, pretending to watch the octopus, but his eyes were on them. On Sophia. "How did he find us?" Adriana breathed. "I don't know, but we need to leave, separately. You take Sophia, go straight home, pack essentials. I'll handle Marco." "Handle how?" "However I need to." Adriana grabbed Sophia's hand. "Come on, baby, we're going on an adventure." "But I wanted to see the otters." "Next time, I promise." She walked toward the exit, forcing herself not to run, not to look back. Every instinct screamed that this was wrong, that Marco's presence meant danger, that the world they'd fled had found them after all. At home, Adriana threw clothes into bags, grabbed important documents, Sophia's favorite toys. Her hands shook so badly she could barely zip the suitcases. "Mama, you're scaring me," Sophia said, her voice small. "I'm sorry, baby. We just need to take a little trip. It'll be okay." "Is Daddy coming?" "I don't know." Her phone rang. Dominic. "Are you safe?" he asked immediately. "At the apartment, packing. What happened with Marco?" "He wants to talk, says he's not here to cause trouble." "And you believe him?" "I don't know. But he's alone, no backup. If the family sent him to grab Sophia, he'd have brought muscle." Adriana's mind raced. "Where is he now?" "Coffee shop 2 blocks from the aquarium. He's waiting." "For what?" "Us. Both of us. He says we owe him a conversation." Every instinct said no, said to run, and keep running. But Adriana had learned in that world that running from conversations often made things worse. "Fine, but somewhere public, and I'm bringing Sophia to Angela first." "There's no time to get her to Boston." "Then a friend's house, someone he doesn't know exists." She called a coworker, explained there was a family emergency. Could Sophia stay for a few hours? The woman agreed immediately, and Adriana dropped Sophia off with promises that everything was fine, that Mama would be back soon. The coffee shop was aggressively Seattle, reclaimed wood, local art, baristas with elaborate tattoos. Marco sat in a corner booth, looking out of place in his expensive coat, his city edge visible despite 3 years and 3,000 miles of distance. Adriana slid in across from him. Dominic sat beside her, tense and ready. "You look good," Marco said to Adriana. "Healthy?" "Seattle agrees with you." "How did you find us?" "I'm good at my job. Even when I'm not trying to find people, I tend to find them." He sipped coffee that had probably gone cold. "Relax. I'm not here to drag you back or hurt anyone. I came to warn you." "Warn us about what?" Dominic's voice was hard. "The family's imploding. I told you that months ago, but it's gotten worse. Carlo Benedetti's trying to consolidate power, absorb the territories. He's been systematically eliminating anyone with a claim to leadership, which means anyone with Russo blood." "I'm out," Dominic said. "Completely out. I have no claim to anything. You're Antonio's nephew. That makes you a threat whether you want to be or not. And Sophia..." Marco's eyes flicked to Adriana. "Your daughter has the bloodline, Carlo's old school. He won't tolerate loose ends." Adriana's voice came out flat. "He wants to kill my daughter. He wants to eliminate anyone who could challenge him. Right now, that's a small list. You're on it." "So what do we do?" Dominic asked. "Keep running? Change identities again?" "You could, but he'll find you eventually. Carlo has resources, patience. He'll keep looking until he finds Sophia, and then... Marco stopped, the implication clear. Adriana felt rage building in her chest. I got out of this life. I did everything right. I left, changed my name, raised my daughter away from all of this. And you're telling me it doesn't matter? That we're still targets? I'm telling you that blood matters more than geography in this world. You know that. Then what do you suggest? We can't keep running forever. Marco leaned forward. You eliminate the threat. Carlo's consolidating power, but he's making enemies. A lot of the old families don't like how he's operating. If someone were to provide information that would bring him down, federal information, the kind that would put him away for life, those families would be grateful. You want us to become informants, Dominic said. I want you to protect your daughter. This is how you do it. Adriana looked at Dominic, saw her own conflict mirrored in his face. They'd spent 3 years building legitimate lives, staying away from anything that resembled the old world. Becoming informants would drag them right back into it. But if it meant Sophia was safe, if it meant Carlo couldn't touch her, what would we need to provide? Adriana asked. Evidence, documentation, testimony. I can get you in touch with the right people, make sure you're protected. Protected like witness protection? Better, the kind of protection that comes from being so useful that you're untouchable. Marco pulled out a card, set it on the table. FBI agent. She's been working organized crime for a decade. Knows the families, knows how to build cases. Talk to her. See what she says. Adriana picked up the card. Patricia Moreno. The name made her stomach turn. It was the same name Serena had used when framing her, when creating fake emails to federal agents. I know what you're thinking, Marco said. That name's not a coincidence. Patricia really does exist. Serena used her identity to make the frame more convincing. But the real Patricia is clean, professional. She'll help you. Why are you doing this? Dominic asked. Why help us? Marco's expression was complicated. Because you got out. You actually did it. Left the life. Built something clean. That takes guts. And because Sophia deserves better than to die because of blood she didn't choose. He stood. I'll give you a week to think about it. After that, I'm gone. Back to New York, back to my own problems. What you do with the information is up to you. He left. Adriana and Dominic sat in silence, the card on the table between them like a grenade. This is insane, Adriana said finally. Yeah. We could run again, new identities, different country this time. And in 5 years, Carlo finds us anyway. Or someone else does. There's always someone else. Adriana knew he was right. Running had bought them time, but it wasn't a permanent solution. Eventually, the past caught up. It always did. If we do this, she said, if we work with the FBI, we have to be smart. Get immunity for anything we might know, make sure we're protected, that Sophia's protected. Agreed. And after, if it works, if Carlo goes down, we're done. No more family business, no more contacts. We cut every remaining tie. I'm already done, Adriana. I have been since the day you left. She looked at him, really looked at him. 3 years of proving himself, of showing up for Sophia, of building a legitimate business and staying clean. He'd done everything he'd promised. Maybe it was time to actually believe him. Okay, she said. Let's call Patricia Moreno. The FBI agent met them 2 days later in a nondescript office downtown. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed with the tired competence of someone who'd seen everything twice. She listened to their story without interrupting, taking notes in precise handwriting. You have direct knowledge of Russo family operations? She asked Dominic. 3 years' worth. Territory management, financial structures, enforcement protocols. I ran a significant piece of the organization before I left. And you're willing to testify? If it means my daughter is safe, yes. Patricia turned to Adriana. You were married to him during that time. That makes you a potential witness too. I tried to stay out of the business side. But you saw things, heard things, attended family meetings. Adriana thought about the dinners, the conversations she'd only half understood at the time, the details she'd absorbed without meaning to. Yes. Then you're both valuable. If you're willing to cooperate fully, we can build a case. But you need to understand what you're signing up for. This isn't a quick process. It could take months, maybe years. You'll be interviewed extensively, your lives examined, your credibility challenged. And if it goes to trial, you'll be exposed. The family will know you cooperated. Carlo wants us dead anyway, Dominic pointed out. At least this way we get something out of it. Patricia studied them both. I'll be honest, most people in your position don't make it. They either get killed before they can testify, or they lose their nerve and recant. This is dangerous. For all of you. We understand, Adriana said. Do you? Because your daughter's safety depends on you following through. If you start this and don't finish, you'll be in more danger than you are now. The weight of the decision pressed down. Adriana thought about Sophia, about the life they'd built, about the impossible choice between running forever and fighting back. We'll do it, she said, whatever it takes. The next 6 months were brutal. Hours of interviews, document review, building the case piece by piece. Dominic provided the operational details, how money moved, where bodies were buried, who gave orders. Adriana corroborated what she'd witnessed, filled in social dynamics, identified key players from family gatherings. Patricia was thorough and relentless. She challenged every statement, verified every claim, built a case so airtight that even the best lawyers couldn't dismantle it. Sophia, mercifully, was kept out of it. She went to preschool, played with friends, lived a normal life while her parents spent evenings answering questions about murder and extortion. The strain showed. Adriana lost weight, slept poorly, jumped at unexpected sounds. Dominic developed a nervous habit of checking windows, scanning crowds, always looking for threats. They were running on fear and determination, waiting for the moment Carlo figured out what they were doing. The moment came in March, almost a year after Marco's warning. Adriana was walking Sophia home from preschool when she noticed the car. Black sedan, tinted windows, driving too slowly. Her heart kicked into overdrive. Sophia, hold my hand tight. We're going to walk fast. Why? Just do it. The car pulled ahead, stopped. 2 men got out. Adriana recognized the body language even if she didn't know their faces. Russo crew, or maybe Carlo's personal muscle. She turned to run and found 2 more men behind her, trapped. One of them stepped forward. Mrs. Russo, we need you to come with us. I don't go by that name anymore, and I'm not going anywhere. It wasn't a request. Adriana put herself between the men and Sophia, her mind racing through options. Scream. They were on a public street. Someone would hear. Run. But she couldn't outrun 4 men while carrying a 3-year-old. Fight. Laughable. She'd be dead in seconds. The man reached for her arm. Federal agents. Hands where we can see them. Patricia Moreno appeared from a parked car with 3 other agents, weapons drawn. The Russo men froze, calculating odds, then slowly raised their hands. On the ground. Now. They complied. Patricia kept her weapon trained on them, while the other agents secured them with zip ties. You okay? Patricia asked Adriana. How did you know? We've been watching you. Since we started the investigation, you've had protection. We just try to stay invisible. Adriana's legs felt weak. She picked up Sophia, who was crying, scared by the guns and shouting. It's okay, baby. Everything's okay. These are good guys. Patricia holstered her weapon. This escalates things. Carlo knows you're working with us. We need to move you. Both of you and Dominic. Secure location until the trial. How long? Months, probably, but you'll be safe. Safe. The word felt hollow. They'd been chasing safety for 3 years, and it kept slipping away. But Adriana nodded. Okay. Let's go. The safe house was in Montana, isolated and cold, so different from Seattle that Adriana felt like she'd landed on another planet. She and Sophia had 1 bedroom, Dominic had another. Federal agents rotated shifts outside, armed and vigilant. It was prison in everything but name. Comfortable prison, but still prison. Sophia hated it. She cried for her friends, her preschool, the familiar streets of Seattle. Adriana tried to make it an adventure. They did homeschool lessons, crafts, baked cookies, but the walls closed in more every day. Dominic threw himself into trial preparation, spending hours reviewing testimony with Patricia and the prosecution team. His testimony would be the backbone of the case, detailed, specific, damning. At night, after Sophia slept, Adriana and Dominic would sit in the kitchen, too wired to sleep themselves. I'm sorry, he said one night, for all of this. If I'd never... Don't! Adriana was too tired for apologies. What's done is done. We just need to survive this. After the trial, if we win, we could actually be free, really free. No looking over our shoulders, no running. If we win, that's a big if. We'll win. The case is solid. Cases fall apart. Witnesses recant. Juries get bought. Adriana rubbed her eyes. I won't believe we're safe until Carlo's actually in prison and we're somewhere he can't touch us. Dominic reached across the table, stopped just short of touching her hand. Can I ask you something? What? If this works, if we get through the trial and Carlo goes away and we're actually safe, would you consider trying again? Us, I mean. As a family. Adriana pulled her hand back. Dominic, I know I don't deserve it. Know too much has happened. But these past 3 years, watching you with Sophia, seeing the life you built, I can't stop thinking about what we could have if we tried again. We tried. It ended with you cheating and me almost dying. I was different then, younger, stupider, so focused on being what I thought I needed to be that I destroyed what actually mattered. And you think 3 years fixes that? No. But 3 years of showing up, of being present, of choosing you and Sophia every single day, that has to count for something. Adriana looked at him across the table, this man who'd broken her heart and saved her life in equal measure. Part of her wanted to believe they could rebuild what they'd lost, but the scar tissue was still there, thick and permanent. Ask me after the trial, she said finally. If we're still alive, if Carlo's in prison, if we actually get to have normal lives, ask me then. That's not a no. It's not a yes either. But it was more than she'd given him in 3 years, and they both knew it. The trial started in September. Adriana and Dominic were kept in Montana while their videotape depositions were played for the jury. They watched coverage on news channels, saw reporters discussing the case, saw Carlo being led into the courthouse in chains. The prosecution built its case methodically. Financial records, testimony from other witnesses, the mountain of evidence Dominic had provided. Carlo's lawyers fought hard, tried to discredit witnesses, poke holes in the timeline, but Patricia had been thorough. Every attack was anticipated, every weakness reinforced. On day 12, Dominic's testimony was shown. Adriana watched him on screen, detailed and precise, describing murders and extortion with the clinical detachment of someone who'd left that world behind. The jury listened, rapt. Carlo's lawyer cross-examined aggressively, trying to paint Dominic as unreliable, motivated by revenge. But Dominic stayed calm, consistent, unshakable. 3 weeks into the trial, the defense rested. Closing arguments took 2 days. Then the jury deliberated. Adriana spent 4 days in agonizing limbo, unable to sleep or eat, watching Sophia play while terror gnawed at her insides. If the jury acquitted, Carlo would come for them. Patricia had made that clear. Their only safety was in his conviction. On the afternoon of the 4th day, Patricia called. We have a verdict. Adriana's hand shook so badly she almost dropped the phone. And? Guilty. All counts. Carlo Benedetti is going to prison for the rest of his life. The relief was so overwhelming Adriana couldn't breathe. She sat down hard, tears streaming down her face, unable to speak. You're safe now, Patricia said. It's over. Over. After 3 years of running, 6 months of testimony, weeks of waiting, it was actually over. Dominic came into the room, saw her face, understood immediately. We won? We won. He pulled her into his arms, and she let him, let herself collapse against his chest and cry like she hadn't cried since the night she'd left New York. Dominic held her, and for the first time in 3 years, Adriana let herself believe they might actually survive this. They stayed in Montana for another month while the FBI wrapped up remaining cases against other family members. The Russo organization was effectively dismantled, its leadership dead or imprisoned, its territories absorbed by rivals. The world Adriana had escaped from no longer existed in any meaningful form. When they were finally cleared to leave, Patricia offered witness protection, new identities, relocation assistance, the full package. Thanks, Adriana said, but I think we've had enough of running. You're sure? There could still be people who want revenge. There's always someone who wants revenge, but we can't live our lives hiding forever. They went back to Seattle. Adriana returned to her job at the hospital, enrolled Sophia back in preschool, reclaimed the life they'd paused. It felt surreal at first, doing normal things like grocery shopping without looking over her shoulder. But gradually, she learned to trust it. Dominic stayed in Seattle too, close but not intrusive. He and Adriana developed a new rhythm. Dinner together once a week, all three of them, casual and low pressure. They talked about Sophia's development, shared stories from work, slowly rebuilt a friendship from the ruins of their marriage. One night, 3 months after the trial, Sophia fell asleep on the couch between them during a movie. Dominic carried her to bed while Adriana cleaned up dinner dishes. When he came back, he stood in the kitchen doorway. "You told me to ask again after the trial." Adriana's hand stilled in the dishwater. "I did. So I'm asking. Can we try again? Real try, not just co-parenting. See if we can build something from what's left." She turned to face him. "Why? What's different now?" "Everything. We're different. I've spent 3 years proving I can be the man you needed me to be. You've spent 3 years building a life that doesn't need me. We're not the broken people we were when this started. You hurt me, Dominic, destroyed my trust, and nearly got me killed. Those aren't things you just move past." "I know, but you forgave me. You said so yourself, before you left for Boston." "Forgiveness isn't the same as reconciliation." "I know that too, but maybe—" He stepped closer. "Maybe it's a start. Maybe we take it slow, see where it goes. No pressure, no expectations. Just two people who love their daughter trying to figure out if they can love each other again." Adriana looked at him, really looked at him, saw the changes 3 years had wrought, the softness, the patience, the man who'd shown up for his daughter every single time without fail, the man who'd risked everything to keep them safe, who'd testified against his own family to protect them. He'd spent 3 years earning back what he'd destroyed. Maybe that was enough. "Okay," she said quietly. "We can try. But Dominic, if you hurt me again, if you break this trust again, we're done, permanently. No third chances." "I won't. I swear to you, I won't." He kissed her, careful and questioning, and Adriana let herself kiss back. It felt familiar and strange at the same time, the shape of his mouth known, but the context completely different. This wasn't the desperate passion of their early marriage. This was quieter, more fragile, built on ruins, but reaching for something new. When they pulled apart, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. "I love you. I never stopped." "I know. But love isn't enough by itself. You have to choose me every day. Choose us. Choose the quiet life over the excitement. I choose you. Every day, every time. For the rest of my life, if you'll let me." Adriana didn't answer, just pulled him close again. Words were cheap. She'd learned that the hard way. What mattered was action, consistency, the daily choice to show up and be present. If Dominic could do that, really do it, not just for weeks or months, but for years, then maybe they had a chance. They took it slow. Dominic started staying for breakfast after overnight visits with Sophia, then staying the night itself, sleeping on the couch. Eventually, sleeping in Adriana's bed, though sex came even later, when trust had rebuilt enough to allow that kind of vulnerability. Sophia was delighted. "Are you and Daddy getting married again?" "We're figuring things out, baby, taking it one day at a time." "But you love each other?" Adriana looked at Dominic, who was making pancakes at the stove, wearing an apron Sophia had given him that said "World's Best Dad." He caught her looking and smiled. "Yeah," Adriana said. "We love each other." It wasn't the fairy tale ending. They fought sometimes, old wounds reopening when stress hit. Dominic occasionally slipped into old patterns of control before catching himself. Adriana sometimes pulled away when intimacy felt like too much risk. But they worked through it, talked instead of shutting down, went to therapy, individual and couples, and did the hard work of rebuilding. A year later, Dominic proposed again, not with a diamond or a grand gesture, just a quiet question over dinner while Sophia played in the next room. "Marry me," he said. "Not like before. This time we'll both know what we're getting into. This time we'll build it right." Adriana looked at the simple ring he offered. Nothing like the expensive stone from their first engagement. This was modest, personal, bought with legitimately earned money from a man who'd proven himself over 4 years of consistency.
Yes, she said, but we're writing our own vows, and we're doing it small. Just Sophia, Angela, maybe Marco if he's still alive. Whatever you want. They married in October, 5 years after Adriana had left New York, believing she'd never see Dominic again. The ceremony was in their backyard, Seattle's rare sunshine breaking through clouds. Sophia in a flower girl dress she'd picked herself. A handful of friends who knew them as Elena and Daniel Mercer, not Adriana and Dominic Russo. The vows were simple, honest. No promises of perfection, just commitments to keep choosing each other even when it was hard. When the officiant pronounced them married, Sophia cheered so loud the neighbors probably heard. That night, after Sophia was asleep and the guests had gone, Adriana and Dominic sat on their porch with wine and watched the city lights. "Do you think we'll make it?" Adriana asked. "Really make it this time?" "I think we'll try. That's all anyone can promise. It's enough." And surprisingly, it was. They'd survived betrayal, framing, attempts on their lives, federal trials, and years of separation. They'd lost everything and rebuilt from nothing. They'd learned the hard way that love wasn't enough, but love plus work plus choice plus the daily decision to show up for each other might be. Sophia grew up strong and fierce, with her mother's resilience and her father's determination, but none of their damage. She never knew about the Russo family, about the violence her parents had escaped. To her, they were just Elena and Daniel Mercer, boring parents who'd met in college and built a quiet life in Seattle. When she turned 18, they told her the truth. All of it. She processed it with surprising maturity, asked good questions, understood why they'd kept it from her. "So I'm actually Sophia Russo?" she asked. "Legally, you're Sophia Marlowe," Adriana said. "But biologically, yes. You have Russo blood." "Does that mean I'm dangerous?" Dominic laughed. "Only if you choose to be. Blood isn't destiny. You get to decide who you become." Sophia thought about it, then shrugged. "I think I'll stick with being a Marlowe. Sophia Russo sounds like a crime boss. Sophia Marlowe sounds like someone who volunteers at animal shelters." She did volunteer at animal shelters, and went to college for environmental science, and built a life so normal, so safe, so far from the world her parents had escaped that Adriana sometimes cried from sheer relief. They'd done it. Against impossible odds, they'd given their daughter the one thing they'd both been denied, a choice about who to become. Years later, Adriana would look back on the night she'd found lipstick on Dominic's collar and wonder how they'd gotten from there to here, from betrayal and attempted murder to this quiet life where the biggest drama was what to make for dinner. The answer was simple. They'd survived. And then they'd chosen to do more than survive. They'd chosen to build something new from the wreckage, something better than what they'd had before. It wasn't perfect. Some days were still hard, but they faced them together, and that made all the difference. On their 10th anniversary, their second wedding, not their first, Dominic gave Adriana a gift. A framed photo from that terrible night in the warehouse, pulled from security footage, showing them standing together against the Morellis. "Why would I want this?" she asked. "Because it's where we started becoming real. Not the fantasy we'd been living, but the actual people we are. Broken and scared and fighting like hell to survive." He touched her face gently. "Everything after that was us choosing each other. This is proof we could." Adriana looked at the photo, two people in a warehouse surrounded by danger, holding on to each other because it was all they had. Then she looked at the man beside her, older and grayer but still fighting like hell, still choosing her, still showing up day after day after day. "I love you," she said. "I know. I love you too." And in the brownstone in Seattle where they'd built their second chance, surrounded by the evidence of a life well lived, they kissed like people who'd earned every moment of happiness they'd found. It hadn't been easy, it hadn't been clean, but they'd survived, and that was everything.